Pokemon, medicine and martial arts. Hey, fanfic family. So glad to see you here again to continue this incredible adventure. As always, kindly remember, this story is 100% fiction, so don't go looking for dimensional portals in your closet. All rights to this fantastic novel belong to the original author. We're just your humble narrators of epic tales. Are you enjoying the fanfic? Show it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and dropping us a like. And if you're impatient for more exclusive content, our Patreon is your happy place. Chapter 1026 Attack. Ho ha ho ho, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome. You're about to witness a historic moment. A slightly wild laugh rang out. As the sound began, everyone in the venue immediately began searching for its source. However, no source was found. The sound seemed to come from all directions. But then, amidst the darkness that had once blanketed the sky, a terrifying scene unfolded. The darkness that had once enveloped the sky was now filled with tiny specks of red light. These are Pokemon, but there are so many of them. True to her status as a champion, Karonori remained calm and analyzed the situation. She immediately observed that the tiny specks of red light beneath the darkness were clearly eyes, and they were Pokemon eyes. Furthermore, from those sharp eyes, she could tell that the Pokemon in the sky were all different species, perhaps mixed with the same ones. But there were definitely many different kinds. At that moment, the sky was filled with roars, howls, and the unique chirps of bird-type Pokemon. Facing this scene, it felt like the end of the world had arrived, and panic immediately filled the venue. You're such a bad mouth, Yulongzin. I couldn't help but twitch his lips. It's my fault. Let's figure out how to deal with this situation. They're clearly not friendly. Yiyu's expression was extremely solemn, and even his body was slightly tense. Even the Pikachu that had been resting on top of him had slid back onto his shoulder and stood still, looking ready to attack at any moment. As a warrior, Yiyu's eyesight was naturally much stronger than usual. Therefore, even in this situation, he could clearly see the darkness that was currently looming above him. The sight was truly astonishing, and he gasped repeatedly. What was all he saw? Pidgeot, Flamingo, Toucan, and Kingbird. Let's not even mention the common, ubiquitous bird Pokemon. After all, while they are at their peak combat power, they're not particularly rare. They can be found everywhere, and with careful training, a trainer can expect to see some success. But what the hell are all those Pokemon mixed in? Even unexpected intrusions aren't this dramatic, are they? Tyrannosaurus, Dragonite, Armored Bird, Garchomp, Tanabata. The more you saw the Pokemon's faces, the more intense his expression grew. Furthermore, these rarer and even quasi-god Pokemon didn't act alone, but gathered in large groups, creating this overwhelming feeling. But Yiyu's sharp eyes quickly detected that something was amiss with the flocks of Pokemon flying overhead. Besides those Pokemon with inherently ferocious eyes, their eyes blazing crimson. At that moment, even the most gentle Pokemon's eyes were a crimson red, brimming with violence. Their eyes held only a glint of violence, a look of violence that threatened to tear everything in sight to shreds. Yiyu initially thought he'd misjudged them. After all, most flying Pokemon undergo a drastic change in personality upon reaching their final form, becoming ferocious and violent. Take Pidgeot, for example, a gentle character perfect for novice trainers. After evolving into its final form, Pidgeot, its gentle demeanor vanished completely, leaving only a majestic and sharp edge. With this thought in mind, Yiyu, with a touch of anticipation, nervously scanned the surrounding Pokemon, particularly those with gentler personalities even after further evolution. Of course, within this vast population, besides those Pokemon reaching their final evolutionary forms, there were also some that hadn't evolved yet, remaining in their initial forms, or perhaps even evolving only a second time. Yiyu observed all of these. However, the longer he observed them, the more his expression grew grim. The last shred of hope in his heart was completely shattered. This is outrageous. Who on earth could have such audacity? Yiyu grinned, his heart filled with bitterness. How the Kalos Pokemon League tournament is truly a lively affair. If that's the case, how could we be left out? The strange laughter echoed once more, though it was strangely eerie and sinister. Karuna reacted swiftly, issuing orders to her Gardevoir. Gardevoir, use Shadow Ball. Lucario, use Wave Missile. The creature also reacted swiftly, issuing orders to Lucario, who was hiding somewhere. Two spheres of energy collided, creating a resounding explosion. Perhaps because the two skills collided so close to the Flame Runner, the Flame Runner was swept away by the impact. Tisk tisk tisk, Champion Caroline, is this how you greet guests? How rude. As the smoke cleared, a man in samurai attire, wielding a katana, emerged with impatience, trailing a Lucario. The man was also holding a figure, none other than the Flame Runner, who had been knocked out by the impact. The force of the two skills was so immense that even the Flame Runner, who had been affected by the impact, was already unconscious. As for the cat boss, who had been guarding him like a bodyguard, he had already been thrown down the stairs by the impact, his eyes swollen and bloodshot, unable to fight. Chapter 1027 Premeditation. Who are you? How dare you come out and disrupt the normal operation of the league tournament? You don't even know how to spell death? Kalno's face was completely cold, completely devoid of the affable star she had been earlier. Perhaps this was the true face of a champion. Behind him, Gardevoir also adopted a precarious attitude, and as a trainer, she loomed close, always ready to protect him. Oh, who am I? Champion Kalno-sama, you are truly forgetful. You've forgotten me. The man, despite Kalno's questioning, showed no sign of anger, only a soft chuckle. He snatched the life from the unconscious, yet still tightly grasped, holy flame, and tossed it away like trash. Though filled with rage at this scene, Kalno remained silent. He could sense the opponent's immense power. In this situation, if he made any rash moves, or even made any moves that revealed a flaw, he'd be doomed. Yet, throughout, the figure's expression remained unwavering. With a flash of cold light, the life he'd once held in his hand snapped in two. The flame of hope that had once blazed within it was instantly extinguished by the sharp force of the lightning. By the time Karuna, completely horrified, had glanced at the money, the figure had just sheathed his katana. Staring at the figure, the katana slowly returning to its sheath, Karuna's expression darkened, her expression growing even more sullen. Meanwhile, a strange hue flashed in her beautiful eyes, and the corners of her eyes twitched unconsciously. This was a complete provocation to the Alliance. To have the sacred flame, the legacy of the Alliance, slashed like this, isn't that an insult to the Alliance? Oh, it seems our champion, Carol, has recognized me, he chuckled as before, as if completely unconcerned. One of the 8 captains of Organization S, Ghostblade 10, that's right, the person who arrived at this moment was none other than Ghostblade 10. After their captain had just issued the order, they had finally begun their final plan. Hence the current scene, the darkness enveloping the sky, the dense swarm of flying Pokémon, and the crimson glow in their eyes. I'm truly honored that the champion still remembers me. Stop the nonsense. You're the one who caused everything that's happening. I advise you to stop and leave immediately. I can pretend nothing happened. Otherwise, you might have to stay here today. You may be one of the 8 captains in the organization, but are you sure you can stand up to me on your own? Karuna's tone was calm, but her whole being radiated an air of dominance, a unique aura. This was the dominance that came from the Pokemon League champion, who was incredibly confident in their own strength. Indeed, I'm no match for you. In a one-on-one fight, Yishi admitted directly. But before Karuna could breathe a sigh of relief, 2 figures suddenly appeared behind Yishi's tentative position. What if we add them? An equally domineering voice rang out. Karuna was completely lost in her own thoughts. But she subconsciously spat out the names of the people who were coming. Takukura is also one of the 8 captains, and of course, a student of the former Water King. As for you, Snow Leopard, you're also the leader of the 8 captains in the S organization. If Kaluna had managed to remain calm and composed when facing 11 people alone just now, then she would have been slightly more serious when she saw even one more Takukura. But when she saw another Snow Leopard, a flicker of panic crossed Kaluna's eyes. The truth was, Snow Leopard was worthy of the title of the leader of the 8 captains of the S organization, and his strength was on par with those of the champions. And now there were 2 more, Takukura and Ichi, who were only slightly weaker than her. Well, with us as your opponents, isn't it more powerful? Snow Leopard spoke to Kaluna, who looked extremely serious, as if he were an old friend. Although she felt a little flustered, the spirit of the champion forced her to calm down. Even if there are 2 of you here, what can you do? Don't forget that this is the venue for the Alliance competition. You dare to show up so blatantly? Aren't you afraid of international organizations? Or maybe our Alliance and the people of the Heavenly Kings have set up a dragnet to catch you? Faced with Karuna's behavior of pulling off a tiger's skin at this moment, Snow Leopard couldn't help but chuckle. Ha ha ha, stop kidding, stop scaring us. This is indeed the venue for your alliance, but so what? Don't forget that there are densely packed people above your heads, enough to crush you. Besides, are you so sure? Can the other 4 heavenly kings receive the distress message you just sent so quickly and accurately and come to support you? After hearing Snow Leopard say this with a chuckle, Karuna's heart couldn't help but skip a beat, and the originally ominous mood gradually spread to her. Calm down, don't look like you're going to kill me. I just asked my people to entertain the 4 kings and invite them out for tea. Karuna was now even more certain. Why didn't the other 4 kings arrive immediately after the alliance was called? They were clearly being harassed by the people sent by Organization S. It was even possible that the people sent to harass them were also the other 8 captains. Everything about this indicated a premeditated plot. Chapter 1028 Threat. What? Karuna was completely stunned by this moment, for it was just as Snow Leopard had said. In fact, even before the sudden change on the field, he had already notified those within the alliance. He'd called in the other 4 heavenly kings to come and support them, while he himself stalled for time. As long as they waited for the other 4 to arrive, their combined strength would surely crush this long-planned conspiracy. However, Karuna didn't realize that Organization S had already launched its ultimate plan, so how could they not be fully prepared and secure? Therefore, even after their initial meeting, they separated again, each heading off to their respective missions. 4 captains headed for the alliance competition venue, while the remaining 4 captains went out to intercept the reinforcements from the 4 heavenly kings. Don't be so surprised. You'll be even more surprised later. Let me show you the product of our Organization S's intermediate masterpiece ultimate plan. Snow Leopard's face now held a slightly frenzied expression, the excitement of achieving his long-cherished goal. What? Ignoring Karen's surprised question, Snow Leopard grabbed a microphone from somewhere. After testing the sound, he continued, "It's a great honor for everyone here to witness the pinnacle of our organization, a truly new product for the world." Snow Leopard waved his hand as he spoke. Yishi understood immediately, a cruel, yet excited smile playing across his face. He then pulled out something like a remote control and began inputting various commands. As he did so, the previously boisterous atmosphere in the venue fell silent once again. Everyone stared intently at Yishi, who was manipulating the controls, eager to see what incredible event would unfold. Pidioderanosaurus Tanabe, it was like stirring up a hornet's nest. The flying Pokémon, previously soaring peacefully in the sky like a dark cloud, now moved in unison, like robots carrying out their orders. Furious roars erupted from their mouths. The eyes, already bloodshot in the distance, grew even crimson, even taking on a tinge of blood. A ferocious aura emanated from them without reserve. At that moment, they seemed devoid of any sentient Pokémon, like mere war machines controlled by a human, devoid of any emotion. Witnessing this scene, coupled with the incessant, furious roars, everyone in the venue trembled. The less intelligent or timid were practically pissing themselves in fear. Children, weeping in their parents' arms, were frozen in time, their tears subconsciously forgotten. "What the hell are you trying to do?" Karen's face paled as she quickly shouted, "What are you trying to do?" As she gazed at the scene in the sky, even she, the champion, felt a tingling sensation on her scalp. What kind of scene was this? All you see is hundreds and thousands of Pokémon, seemingly afflicted with red eyes, staring down at you with cold, ruthless eyes, like the eyes of heaven, utterly annihilating. All that's evil and good in the world will vanish beneath their gaze. Skills are still gathering in their mouths. From Karonori's long experience in battle, each of these skills, if unleashed, would unleash immense destructive power. What are you trying to do? Nothing, we don't really have any particular plans. We simply want to destroy the Alliance tournament venue. And if possible, take you along with us. This will allow us to begin our journey to glory. And to announce our achievements to the world. Karonori still didn't quite understand, but she grasped the general meaning. The S organization clearly wanted to use the destruction of their Kalos alliance to signal their power to the world. They wanted to ensure that no one would ever underestimate them again, to instill awe in them. You won't succeed. If the alliance discovers we've lost contact, they'll definitely call for help from other regions, we know that. So we'll dispatch resources from other regions to completely destroy this place the moment they arrive, right? Snow Leopard then ignored Karuna and turned his gaze once again to the hundreds of participating Pokémon trainers standing in the center of the venue. Now, I'll give you trainers a chance. After all, To qualify for the so-called Kalos League Pokémon tournament, you must be quite capable. Therefore, if you join our organization, I'll let you go. Otherwise, your fate will be the same as the destruction of this venue. Faced with Snow Leopard's threats, the trainers standing still in the arena were all passionate and frivolous young men and women. Furthermore, Pokémon trainers inherently possess a spirit of courage and a fearlessness of challenge. Therefore, even in such an extremely harsh environment and facing threats, they still displayed the pride that is unique to Pokémon trainers. Moreover, since Pokémon trainers qualified to participate in the Pokémon League tournament, as Snow Leopard had said, they all possessed some degree of strength. Therefore, faced with such a threat, despite their initial panic, they forced themselves to calm down. However, no one took the initiative to express their opinions, and the atmosphere in the arena once again quieted down. Eyes glared at each other. Despite this, despite not fearing the threat posed by Snow Leopard's words, they couldn't help but feel a little uneasy under the hundreds of gazes in the air. Yu could sense the shift in the atmosphere and, with a nagging feeling that something was amiss, he couldn't think of anything else at this point. He didn't want his momentum, just built up, to be crushed immediately. After all, a strong start is followed by a weak second and a weak third. Chapter 1029 Blastoise appears. Therefore, at this crucial moment, Yu decisively stepped forward, ignoring the gazes of the trainers, the audience, and the Pokémon. Evil will never triumph over good. We Pokémon trainers, how could we possibly yield to such evil forces as you? His righteous words echoed throughout the audience, and Yu showed no sign of stage fright. The next moment, he directly ordered Pikachu, use 100,000 volts. Pikachu, already ready for battle, leaped nimbly upon receiving his trainer's command, launching a 100,000 volt blast straight at the Snow Leopard standing on the platform. However, Snow Leopard, a figure of Kurona's caliber, faced Pikachu's sudden 100,000 volt attack. Although he felt a slight error, he remained calm and took a slight step back, allowing the 100,000 volt blast to only reach his feet. After witnessing the scene, Yu couldn't help but sigh in disappointment. He felt sorry for Pikachu's attack, but he was also expecting it to fail. After all, they were in the central area, several thousand meters away from the platform. The power of the 100,000 volt attack would surely be weakened due to the distance. Furthermore, the Snow Leopard was a skilled warrior, and with his quick eyes and hands, he was able to dodge the attack without incident. However, this also illustrates the sheer size of the entire league tournament venue. It covers an area nearly the size of 100 basketball courts. The sheer number of flying-type Pokémon that Organization S has deployed this time is enough to demonstrate just how numerous they are. Among these flying Pokémon are some quasi-gods from the journey to the west. And this is just a flying Pokémon? There are also numerous land-based Pokémon. What kind of number will that be? However, Yu's display was like a barrel of explosives, ignited. The entire scene exploded instantly. Trainers, who had been hesitant, fearful of the intimidating presence of a swarm of flying-type Pokémon overhead, now displayed their fierceness. This was especially true of Yulong Zinai, a fearless individual. Seeing his formidable foe defy power and launch the first salvo of resistance, he, driven by his unyielding spirit, refused to be outdone. He also launched his own counterattack. Tyrannosaurus, this time, I'm counting on you. Use Destruction Beam, showing no mercy. Yulong Zinai immediately ordered the Tyrannosaurus to unleash its ultimate move as soon as it was released. Tyrannosaurus, the Tyrannosaurus, freshly released from its Pokeball, also exuded an immensely powerful aura, a force comparable to that of Yu's Pikachu, even surpassing it in some respects. Yu's expression darkened upon seeing the Tyrannosaurus. He hadn't expected Nobuo Yulong to improve so quickly after such a long absence. It wasn't just him. From the moment Yu launched the rebellion, the surrounding trainers had already begun to work together. After all, despite facing a critical situation, they were still Pokémon trainers, competitors in the Pokémon League. They absolutely had to seize every opportunity to understand their opponents and avoid being disadvantaged. But once there was one, there was another. With Nobuo Yulong and Tyrannosaurus joining in, the other spectators, unable to contain their burning passion, also launched their own rebellion. Yanrong and Xiaozin were the trainers who followed Nobuo Yulong in launching the rebellion. They said the Pokémon they sent out were a Steelix and a Greninja. They also understood the urgency of the situation, so they used their full power without reservation. The combined power of Destruction Beam and Water Shuriken was several times greater than their individual abilities. The combined power of these two skills even gave Snow Leopard a slight sense of danger. With the combined power of these two skills, they were already within reach of him. Therefore, without the slightest hesitation, feeling any sense of embarrassment, he expertly retrieved his Pokeball and released his Blastoise. Compared to the powerful aura emanating from the Tyrannosaurus and other Pokemon sent by Urarunabuniga and his companions, Blastoise's aura was more restrained, like a vast ocean, unfathomable and unfathomable, even giving off a slight illusion of peace. Facing the combined attack of Destruction Time and Water Shuriken, the Blastoise remained motionless, silently turning its back. With their front facing their trainer and their back facing the attack, they unleashed their skills. Seeing this, some trainers let out gloating, confident smiles, sensing the immense power of this combined skill. However, Xiaozhi and Xiaomao, the two individuals involved, wore grave expressions. Compared to other trainers, they had a more intuitive understanding of their Pokemon skills. They felt that the combined skills of their two Pokemon might have no effect on the Blastoise before them, even though it was still packing its punch. Sure enough, just as Xiaozhi and Xiaomao had imagined, the combined skills struck Blastoise's shell like a sharp arrow striking the world's strongest shield. There was no sound at all, but as the smoke gradually dissipated, the shell of the Blastoise, targeted by the skills, remained intact, even faintly reflecting light. Chapter 1030, Counterattack. The combined power of the two skills didn't even cause the slightest damage to Blastoise. Even a faint glint of light still shone from its shell, revealing just how well Snow Leopard had nurtured this Blastoise. Interesting. You're still planning to resist? Since you won't surrender, don't blame me for being rude. Snow Leopard's expression darkened. He was filled with rage at the indifference shown by the crowd before him. After all, he was the leader of the S organization, Captain Ba. Under normal circumstances, he might have ignored them completely, but now, even after giving them face, they refused to accept it. Blastoise, use Water Cannon, Snow Leopard said lightly. Some trainers didn't even understand what that meant. Facing the water cannons that Blastoise had adjusted, the trainers didn't intend to sit still and wait for death. They also responded with resistance, issuing orders to their Pokemon. Because Blastoise's cannon was aimed at none other than the Pokemon trainers of the contestants in the center of the venue. Nidoking, use Destruction Beam to intercept. Croclaw, use Water Cannon. Colerator, use Smash. At this moment, there was a real Pokemon equivalent of the 8 immortals crossing the sea, each displaying their own unique abilities. Facing the oncoming water cannon, the trainer's eyes weren't filled with fear at all, but rather with excitement. Perhaps it was because the combined attack from Xiaozhi and Xiaomao had just dazzled the surrounding trainers. The following trainers followed suit, calling upon familiar or close trainers, each using their own Pokemon's abilities to form a combined attack to intercept the water cannon. However, the two water cannons were like a raging water dragon, without any frills or sonic booms, simply crushing any other attacking abilities. Seeing the situation was hopeless, some of the more decisive trainers chose not to attack, instead deploying their Pokemon on the defensive. Of course, some of these defended, believing attack was the best defense, and some used defensive skills to block the water cannon. A few of the more astute, seeing the situation was hopeless, distanced themselves from the water cannon's attack range. Yu and Yulong's and I were among them. Just as they'd anticipated, Blastoise's two water cannon blasts were no match for the current skills. This was entirely thanks to Yun's numerous attacks. While they didn't successfully block the attack, they did mitigate its power. This caused the trainers closest to the water cannon to faint, while the others caught in the crossfire only suffered minor injuries. However, at the moment of their resistance, the competing trainers united. There might be a few exceptions, but upon seeing some trainers faint from the water cannon, the remaining trainers rushed forward to drag them to safety. As they began to resist, the audience also began to protest. After all, rather than just sitting there doing nothing, it might be better to join the resistance of the more powerful trainers in this tournament. Perhaps there was still hope. Once someone took the lead, a chain reaction would immediately follow, with everyone else vying to join in the resistance. Among the audience, there were many skilled trainers. Some had bought tickets to watch the event, treating it as a spectacle. Others were relatives and friends of the participating trainers, so the accompanying group wasn't too weak. Still others were trainers who hadn't collected all 8 gym badges and therefore missed the competition. Consequently, within a short period of time, a significant force coalesced within the audience and began to revolt. Their first target was not elsewhere, but the intersections of the various league conference venues. At that moment, the venue was like a cage, trapping them. Only by breaking out would they have any hope of survival. As for why not escape through the air? Trainers with flying-type Pokemon had considered that approach, but it would have been disastrous. After all, attempting to break out against a horde of powerful and relentless flying-type Pokemon was truly audacious. Perhaps they hadn't woken up yet. As soon as they took off, they would likely be bombarded by these Pokemon's attacks. Therefore, these people had no choice but to escape through the various entrances and exits. However, as soon as they stood up, the S organization members immediately noticed that something was amiss and immediately began guarding each entrance and exit. Furthermore, since the ultimate plan was being implemented, the S organization had to be absolutely sure of no failures, and they had already taken all possible emergencies into account. Therefore, as the group in the audience fought back, many figures suddenly counterattacked. Whenever a stronger trainer resisted or engaged in a fight with an S organization Pokemon, these people would simply attack them with clubs, leaving them defenseless. This method was the only one that was quick and had no side effects. Once a trainer was unable to resist, without the trainer's orders and support, the Pokemon would be unable to function. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 1031 Dialogue. While various battles were also raging in the audience, and the Pokemon League was facing a passive situation due to defection, the Pokemon League, which everyone had been concerned about, realized that something was amiss. After receiving the call for help, they finally dispatched their combatant stationed in Mire City to provide support. They also began sending out signals for resources to several nearby cities. This was because the S organization had clearly arrived well prepared. Under these circumstances, defeating or even repelling the S organization from Mire City alone was simply impossible. Therefore, the forces of other parties were needed. Fortunately, Mire City, as a landmark city in the Kalos region and a cosmopolitan city, had a strong Pokemon League support force. Furthermore, Mire City currently had the Mire Gym, and its trainer, Citron, was a top-tier Pokemon trainer skilled in electric-type techniques. They had already begun gathering all the Pokemon in the gym to provide support and rescue efforts. Perhaps due to the sudden change, Mire City, which usually enjoyed clear skies even at night, was now shrouded in thunderclouds. It's truly a storm brewing. Atop the iridescent crystal tower, Mire City's iconic landmark, gym trainer Citron had long since stopped working on his machinery. He stepped out the glass window and gazed at the brightly lit League Games venue not far from the iridescent crystal tower. He couldn't help but sigh. His eyes were filled with worry. "Brother, what's wrong?" His younger sister, Eureka, came to her brother's side. Even she could sense the uneasy atmosphere permeating Mire City. The iridescent crystal tower was Mire City's tallest building, offering a perfect view of the League Games venue. Seeing the sky above the venue nearly covered in dark clouds and shrouded in darkness, Eureka's young heart trembled. Feeling his sister's trembling hand in his, Citron's eyes, which had been lost in thought behind the glare from the floor-to-ceiling windows, finally regained clarity. He placed his large hand on his sister's trembling hand, offering gentle comfort. "It's okay, Eureka. You have to trust me. I'm a formidable gym trainer, and I'll definitely protect you." "Yes, I do." Looking at his brother at this moment, there was no trace of his usual frail, bewildered self. This was perhaps Citron's truest self as a Mire gym trainer. A resolute look remained in his eyes, giving Eureka a strong sense of security. "Master, there's a call from the Alliance. Can you answer it?" At this moment, Citron's robot, Citroid, approached, carrying a phone. "Brother, if you have something to do, go ahead and do it." Eureka seemed quite understanding. After enjoying another pat on the head from her brother, she obediently pushed him aside and resumed playing with Citroid. Citroën, on the other hand, answered a call from the Alliance. After only a few minutes of conversation, Citroën's face lost its gentle coaxing warmth, replaced by a look of profound solemnity. He responded to the Alliance's resounding reply, I understand the situation. I will definitely complete the mission. Yulika was already playing with Citroid, their innocent and joyful laughter echoing. Citroën felt embarrassed to disrupt the seemingly harmonious atmosphere. So, he stood quietly, watching the scene unfold before him. Yulika was a very understanding child after all. Seeing her brother's expression, she knew immediately that he must have something to do. Instead, he took the initiative to step forward and persuade his brother, "Brother, do you have something important to do? Then go and do it. After all, you are the gym leader of Meyer Gym, the sheriff who maintains the peace of the residents of this city." Zitron looked at his sensible sister and was silent for a long time, but soon he smiled with relief. He pushed his glasses and touched his sister's head. "In that case, would you like to help me?" Eureka was overjoyed to hear that her brother was actually going to ask her to do him a favor. She jumped up and down, clapping her hands with delight. "Great, great. Just tell me what you need, and I'll definitely help you. In that case, Eureka, would you like to help me protect the Meyer Gym?" "Brother, do you mean for me to become a gym trainer?" "Great. I've always wanted to experience the feeling of battling Pokémon." Eureka's face lit up with excitement. Just as he'd said, he'd wanted to try it for a long time, but his brother hadn't allowed it. "And, brother, you're going to protect the people of Meyer City. Then I'll help you protect the Meyer Gym. After all, the Meyer Gym is our home, and I'll definitely protect it." Seeing Eureka's earnest expression, Hitron was stunned for a moment, a complex mix of emotions swirling within him. But in the end, it only morphed into these words. "Okay." As a gym trainer, Citron ultimately left, choosing to protect the city and those who needed his protection. He didn't bring many Pokémon with him this time, only 3, but they were all the strongest Pokémon in his gym, some even passed down from previous generations. The remaining Pokémon remained at the gym, under the command of Eureka, who was actually Citroën, a robot he had researched and built. As previously mentioned, Meyer City might be facing an unprecedented crisis, and Citroën didn't want his home to be robbed while he was fighting on the front lines with all his might. Chapter 1032 Battle. Just as everyone received the message and mobilized their resources, the Kalos League tournament venue was a scene of chaos. Perhaps because most of the organization's members were already there, and with the presence of 3 of the 8 captains, the sky was like a dark cloud, and the dense swarm of flying-type Pokémon remained motionless. However, their cold, crimson eyes watched the scene below with a constant watch. Although the flying-type Pokémon were somewhat hesitant to act due to their own members being below, whenever an S organization member fell behind in the battle below, the flying Pokémon would often assist. Often, a single attack would unleash a flurry of skills, completely defeating the opposing trainer. If one skill failed, they would simply add another, given the numerous Pokémon watching from above. However, compared to the resistance launched by the Pokémon trainers in the center of the venue, the battles among the audience were even more intense, each one thoroughly enraged. Groups of 3 or 5 gathered together, seeking mutual support. These people often knew each other and had come together to watch the opening ceremony of the Pokémon League tournament. However, once the chaos erupted, especially with the backstabbing of S organization members among the crowd, the spectators began to distrust their own entourage, and each had already taken shelter to protect themselves from sudden attacks. However, the enemy was too powerful. While the stronger trainers could withstand it, the weaker trainers faced the S organization, not only in a backstab, but even in a direct battle, and therefore had to huddle together for support. As for the security forces originally stationed at the venue, they were also forced to retreat due to the sudden turnaround and fall back. Thus, every intersection of the league tournament was once again blocked by S organization members. However, as time passed, the situation in the audience became more and more stalemate. Initially, the sudden defection of the S organization members lurking in the crowd caught everyone off guard and caused panic. However, there were also powerful trainers within the crowd who, through their own strength, quickly managed to calm the situation. But then, the flying-type Pokémon above and below began to stir again, unleashing a flurry of skills, imbued with a destructive aura. 2 flowers blossomed, each with its own beauty. Forget the audience seats for now, the crowd was breaking through. Returning to the central arena, the trainers had already deployed nearly every Pokémon they could, some sending out 1, some 2, and even their entire arsenal. Faced with this unpredictable situation, the more prudent trainers chose to err on the side of caution, sending out only 1 Pokémon. "I didn't expect this to happen. But it doesn't matter. This mission was only meant to make the Kalos region our stepping stone to world fame. Since you're all so ungrateful, don't blame me. Blastoise, take care of them. Snow Leopard's patience seemed to have run out. He waved at the assembled trainers and Pokémon and addressed his command directly to Blastoise. What? How could Karen allow Snow Leopard to bully trainers and Pokémon so recklessly? She immediately stepped forward, her Gardevoir even more so, already taking a lead, her stance fully deployed. What are you trying to do? Your opponent is me. Oh, interesting. In that case, allow me to learn from the champion again. We've finally finished our unfinished battle. Looking at the deep crater created by Shadow Ball blocking his way, Snow Leopard paused and turned his gaze to Kalna. As Snow Leopard spoke, Blastoise immediately stepped forward to confront Gardevoir. Kalna didn't want to engage in further discussion with Snow Leopard, issuing a decisive order. Gardevoir, use Shadow Ball, then Illusion Light. Are you so eager and impatient? Then, Blastoise, show this champion your power. Use Water Cannon, then High Speed Spin. Facing the Shadow Ball attack, Blastoise's Water Cannon collided with the Shadow Ball. The Shadow Ball only held out for a moment before dissipating, but Gardevoir's Illusion Light arrived soon after. Circles of transparent, colorful ripples began to shrink toward Blastoise. Just as Blastoise was about to be completely engulfed, it suddenly retracted its limbs, head, and tail into its shell. Then, a fierce, high-speed spin ensued, and the other phantom lights, which had been about to shrink, were instantly deflected. What? Gardevoir used Teleport to dodge. Facing the rapidly spinning Blastoise, Gardevoir vanished in a flash, disappearing from Blastoise's path. I'll leave those guys to you. I'll take care of the champion. Huh? I didn't expect you to get so arrogant in just a short while. Karuna was irritated by the Snow Leopard's dismissive attitude. Leave those guys to us. We'll show them what society really means. After repeating their boss's orders, Ichiju and Takukura didn't refuse and turned to head towards the group of trainers gathered below. They were eager to fight, looking very interested. It seemed they had been unable to hold back for a long time, but they had just been concerned about their boss' presence and not wanting to steal his limelight, so they had been holding back. But now, things were different. Following them were some members of the S organization who had appeared out of nowhere. Chapter 1033, The Iron Claw Lobster Shows Its Power. Yours next, Yishi and Takuma came sauntering over with a large group. Fortunately, the central arena was originally intended for Pokemon battles, so with Takuma, Yishi, and their followers joining in mid-game, it didn't seem overly crowded. However, with Takuma and Yishi joining the fray, the trainers were now limited in their movements, unable to effectively disrupt the battle. They were completely contained, and the piercing gazes of the opposing group were intense. The two leading the charge, in particular, exuded an intimidating aura. Although, before this, the trainers' attempts at disruption had had no effect, did they really think the dense swarms of flying-type Pokemon flying in the sky were just for show? You saw that the flying Pokemon didn't have the same lively eyes as the others, and in fact, their gazes seemed rather dull, waiting for commands before engaging in battle. However, these Pokemon are like robots. Once they're given a program command, they'll operate autonomously. Just now, for example, the Snow Leopard instructed the flying Pokemon to immediately attack any vulnerable areas of the warriors below. This is why the Pokemon in the sky appear to have no intention of fighting, yet often manage to disrupt the trainers below with a few attacks when they're in an advantageous position. Takukura and Yishi are both among the 8 captains of Organization S, and their display of strength is truly terrifying. At least for the trainers present, some of whom are relatively new this year. While their success in the gym challenge and their qualification for the league tournament certainly demonstrate their strength, compared to the truly powerful, they're still vulnerable. Unless they have exceptional talent or a bit of luck in capturing a stronger Pokemon. Perhaps it was because Ichi and Takuma's overly impressive appearances had immediately aroused the anger and hostility of the other trainers present. Coupled with a desire to demonstrate their strength, a few trainers rushed forward first. Metalops uses Destruction Beam, Arcane uses Flame Vortex, Metalops uses Comet Punch. Without even a moment's hesitation, the trainers converged and launched their first attacks at Takuma and Ichi. Facing this wave of attacks, Takuma and Ichi didn't give in, even though their levels were lower. Takuma took a step forward, and a crayfish emerged from behind him, facing the wave of attacks. The crayfish only let out a low growl and remained motionless, facing the barrage of attacks. It simply stood silently before Takuma, as if stunned by the barrage of attacks. Use hard. Upon receiving its trainer's command, the iron claw took on a metallic sheen, as if it had become as hard as iron. Seeing this trainer, who only cared about defending and not even allowing their Pokémon to dodge, the trainers who had their Pokémon attacking wore mock smiles, a look of certainty of victory. They also somewhat disdained Takukura, the so-called captain of the 8th team. He dared to show off in front of them. Every trainer harbored such a beautiful idea, how, after this Iron Claw was completely incapacitated, they could continue to press forward, magnify their gains, and ultimately turn the tide. Then, they would become the league's greatest heroes. If Yu knew what they were thinking, he wouldn't know how to complain. They were indeed just novice trainers. Even if they earned 8 gym badges and qualified for the league tournament, what good would it do? This mentality is truly immature. If Takukura were still one of the 8 captains of the organization, and were so easy to deal with, then they wouldn't be just novice trainers anymore. Almost everyone could become a Pokémon Master, right? Just as you imagined. The smug expressions on the trainers' faces didn't last long before they were shattered in the next second. A barrage of attacks hammered at the lobster, believing it would completely disable it, or at least leave it critically injured and near death. But what happened now? After the smoke and dust cleared, a faint reflection lingered on the lobster's body. Clearly, it had had no effect at all. However, the lobster seemed completely enraged. After all, it was a rogue Pokémon, radiating a menacing aura. With its personality, how could it possibly withstand the attacks of those Pokémon? Therefore, without even waiting for the trainer's orders, it charged forward with eyes blazing. Even though the trainers had already reacted and ordered their Pokémon to block it, the lobster swung its massive claws, unleashing a stream of bubbles directly at the fire-breathing Arcanine. Furthermore, relying on its formidable physique, it charged directly in front of Tyranitar and Metagross, raising its massive claws and smashing them down fiercely. 2 muffled thuds echoed, setting off a chain reaction. Tyranitar and Metagross, both considered powerful Pokémon, were left swollen and incapacitated by the lobster's 2 crab punches. Furthermore, due to the lobster's immense power, it sent the 2 already formidable Pokémon flying backwards, knocking down the Pokémon behind them as well, and the powerful impact sent a large group of them reeling. Chapter 1034, Lucario's Power. Iron Claw. Just as the Iron Claw lobster was unleashing its might, overwhelming a vast array of Pokémon and trainers, a battle nearby was about to break out, the atmosphere almost oppressive. After all, it was common knowledge that the sight of familiar faces was particularly fraught with jealousy. After all, the remaining captain, Yishi, was certainly quite familiar with the familiar faces before him, having clashed before. Kid, your name is Yu, right? I didn't expect to run into you everywhere I went. Are you stalking us, the dog? Yishi was starting to feel a headache. Ever since he'd met Yu, nothing good had seemed to happen. Every time he took action, he'd run into this pesky kid. Furthermore, his own plans always seemed to fail because of him. That's right, since you asked so sincerely, then I'll mercifully tell you, to prevent the world from being destroyed, to protect world peace, to uphold true justice, a lovely, charming, and upright man, Yu longs in Yi, White Cave, a white tomorrow. It awaits us, that's it, along with my fellow justice messengers Yanrong and Xiaozin. Hey, why are they forcing themselves into a drama? What's with these guys? They're actually posing. Yishi couldn't help but twitch his lips. They really are just a bit of a joke. But the long face that made Yishi's forehead throb was still to come. As if oblivious to Yishi's increasingly worsening complexion, Yu and Yulong's and Yi showed a rare moment of tacit cooperation. What should have ended perfectly, but with the sudden appearance of Xiaozin and Yanrong, these 2 extraneous characters, they were both furious and began to bicker. At this moment, Ichizu felt his expression shatter, and his katana hand trembled uncontrollably. This is too much? This is too much? Do you think I exist? Go Lucario, teach them a lesson. Hey, uncle, your tolerance is too weak, isn't it? It's just a few words, is it necessary to just go on and on like this? But since you want to fight, then of course I'll fight to the end. Go up, Salamander, continue the fight. Pikachu, I'm asking you for one more favor. Greninja, don't fall behind, steal back, we have to do our part too. At this moment, in the central battle arena, Perhaps because Takukura's side was in a very weak position due to being outnumbered, the trainers saw hope and joined the battle. On the other hand, Ichizu's side was not ignored. The 4 people, including Yulong Zinai, stepped forward to resist. As for the remaining Pokémon, the more astute trainers of the S organization separated them, forcing them to fight on their own, unable to rescue each other. Lucca, as if sensing its trainer's wrath, Lucario launched with all his might, unleashing his alloy claws with both hands. Am I mistaken? How can this Lucario be so powerful? Is this a file? It wasn't like this the last time I saw him. In a flash, Lucario reached the 4 Pokémon. Facing Pikachu, they used their abilities to block their advance, but Lucario simply wielded his bone club, gathering energy and wielding it with a few swings. Furthermore, Lucario unleashed a simple sweeping blow with the club. In a single blow, the 4 Pokémon in front were swept up in the attack. Faced with this situation, the 3 Pokémon unleashed their Iron Tail attacks in unison to block the blow. Greninja seized the opportunity and launched an II Slash. Just as Greninja was about to launch an attack, taking advantage of Lucario's Bone Club being blocked by Pikachu and the other 3 Pokémon using Iron Tail, a volley of missiles hurled itself directly at it, sending it flying. However, it seemed precisely because of this, Lucario's resistance was weakened, giving Pikachu and the other 3 Pokémon an opening. Their iron bones instantly increased their power, sending Lucario flying. Furthermore, faced with such a prime opportunity, the trainees present were no pushovers, and they immediately pressed forward. Watching Lucario's backswing, Pikachu reacted with the swiftest of moves, using 100,000 volts. This was followed by Salamander's Dragon Breath and Steelops's Stone Attack. Lucario, with his agility, successfully dodged the 100,000 volts. Then, the Bone Club swung repeatedly, using Bone Strike to its full potential, effectively blocking Dragon's Breath. However, the subsequent Stone Attack proved difficult to dodge, as it was now in a state of paralysis. It was directly hit by the Stone Attack, sent flying backwards through the air, and landed heavily on the ground not far from Tenno. That's interesting. I didn't expect your Pokémon to reach near champion level. Ten smiled, and without further delay, he swiped the orb on the hilt of his katana. Lucario, who had fallen to the ground and was rising, instantly shone with a rainbow of light. This light then complemented the glow of the katana orb, and the mega-evolved Lucario instantly appeared. With just this appearance, a powerful pressure spread out in all directions. That's all well and good. In Pikachu's world, the 4 Pokémon weren't ordinary. They were all the strongest or the ones they had followed the longest. Oh, so you're cheating because you can't beat them. Mega Evolution. Yes, I did. So what? Don't tell me Pokémon battles are absolutely fair, because there's nothing fair in this world. If you can Mega Evolve, you can do it. I won't stop you. A smug, provocative smile played across his face, but it didn't last long. As you wish, then. Chapter 1035 Dissipation. Wah, what the hell? Yishi couldn't help but let out a puzzled sound, but before he could even finish his words, his eyes nearly popped out of his head in shock. The scene before him was truly shocking. The 3 imps across from him all reached for an item in unison. And then? Just like his Mega Lucario had just Mega Evolved and died, rays of light emanated from the 3 Pokémon across from them. Then, along with the rising light, 3 powerful auras emanated from the reborn Pokémon. While these auras weren't as powerful as his Mega Lucario, they still stood out as the brightest in the room. At least among this crowd of Pokémon, these 3 Pokémon stood out. Yishi wasn't the only one confused at this moment. Yu was also somewhat bewildered. What was going on? We agreed to attack together, but how did you all evolve together? Glancing to his left and right at Yulong Zinai, Yanrong, and Xiaozin, these 3 faces, seemingly calm and slightly handsome, Yu, for some reason, suddenly felt the urge to punch them in the face. Oh, Yu, I didn't expect you didn't evolve. That's such a shame. No. How come all your Pokémon can Mega Evolve? I didn't expect you even knew how to Mega Evolve. But don't be envious. You're sure you can get that opportunity too. Look at the 2 beads on Greninja and me. Aren't they the legendary Obedient Key and Evolution Stone? Xiaozin swaggered his hand, clutching the Mega Evolution Key. Suddenly, Yulong Zinai tapped his shoulder, and Yu looked over, somewhat puzzled. Yulong Zinai had assumed that all the Pokémon could Mega Evolve, except Yu's. Feeling a little annoyed or angry, he offered words of comfort. Yu, Don't be too discouraged. These evolution keys and evolution stones were actually given to me by my brother. I can ask for you when the time comes, and seeing that the two brothers next to you and the uncle in front can evolve, there must be a lot of these evolution keys and evolution stones. I believe you will be able to find them with your luck. Looking at Yulong Zina, who was trying to persuade him earnestly, Yu suddenly hesitated. Should he tell the truth? Huh? It's just a mega evolution. Even if it can be mega evolved, so what? Low strength is just low strength after all, and what are you so proud of? In the end, in the face of powerful strength, any means will be wiped out. Yishi finally came back to his senses from the shocking scene in front of him. After all, no matter how rare it is, mega evolution is not something he has never seen before. Yu, just stay aside and watch our battle. It'll also give Pikachu a good rest. Yeah. After all, Yu is the only trainer among us who doesn't have a mega evolution Pokemon. Xiaozhi seized the opportunity to taunt him. Yu reached out to say something, but Yanrong had already stepped forward. Leave your Yu side to us. Go support the other trainers, they seem a bit overwhelmed. Come back to help us once you've stabilized the situation. Yu knew that whatever the 3 rounds were up to, they were ultimately doing him a good deed. But was I, Yu, so weak and easily bullied? It's just a mega evolution, right? It's not like I've ever fought before. Even after 2 weeks of special training, Yu had already bond evolved with Suicune without the need for an evolution key or evolution stone. Although he did have Suicune's evolution key and evolution stone, that was fine. However, since the other party had requested it, Yu could only reluctantly agree. Yu also planned to help the group in the audience break through first, at least to communicate with the outside world and let them know what was happening inside. Elsewhere, the battle on the platform was gradually reaching its climax. Both Blastoise and Gardevoir had already mega evolved. The collision of their skills often caused loud explosions, and the original platform was already riddled with holes. At this point, there was no time to worry about the situation at the venue after the aftermath of this battle. The 4 Heavenly Kings and the Myargin leader, Citron, who had come to support them from outside, were now stopped by the other 5 captains. They were all locked in a fierce battle, and defeating the 8 captains, who were almost equally powerful, was extremely difficult. At least if the other party dragged their feet, breaking out would be impossible. Therefore, all that remained was to see how the battle inside the venue would unfold. At the outset of the battle in the audience, the crowd's human wave tactics seemed poised to achieve an overwhelming advantage. However, their human wave tactics pale in comparison to the massive wave of Pokémon in the sky. Who could argue that under such circumstances, most flying-type Pokémon wouldn't be able to attack? Yet, they could engage in a relentless battle. Often, when one Pokémon was incapacitated, the next would follow. It's worth noting that the flying-type Pokémon in the sky, like a dark cloud covering the sky, had no idea what the S organization had done to them. Whenever a Pokémon lost its ability to fight, it simply dissipated into tiny specks of light. Where it went was likely known only to the S organization. As for whether this dissipation would affect their own Pokémon, at this moment, the only remaining concern for the trainers and spectators in the audience was self-preservation, protecting themselves from harm. As for the rest, he no longer had the energy to care about it. After all, this was a very real problem. If he couldn't even save his own life, wouldn't it be a bit ridiculous to worry about other things? Chapter 1036 The Man in Black Robe. Armored Bird uses iron wings. A member of Organization S was commanding a warbird in battle, facing a trainer in the audience. Judging from his age, he was likely a parent cheering on his child. This parent, however, was quite capable, commanding a Charmeleon in battle against Warbird, surrounded by a few ordinary people who didn't own Pokémon. Warbird initially dominated Charmeleon, relying on its aerial advantage, but Charmeleon's fire-type counterpower eventually neutralized Warbird, rendering it incapacitated. Seeing it was losing money, the trainer, incapacitated by its own Charmeleon, transformed into tiny pinpricks of light, dissipating into the night sky. The parent thought they could rest for a while, but before they could, a toucan flew down from the sky, commanded by the Organization S member. The toucan, newly joined, launched a swift attack without needing the member's orders. After a frenzied attack, Charmeleon was ultimately defeated and rendered incapacitated. The parents' face paled as they watched their Charmeleon crumble. However, Toucan didn't offer to exchange Pokémon, instead attacking the trainer directly. Facing Toucan's subsequent attacks, The trainer instinctively closed his eyes and resigned himself to his fate. After all, the opposing Pokémon were incredibly erratic. Unless they were completely incapacitated, they fought relentlessly, like tireless machines. Furthermore, they felt no pain, even from attacks, like the Walking Dead. He had previously triumphed over several Pokémon thanks to Charmeleon's immense power, but when it finally ran out of steam, Charmeleon was completely incapacitated, while the enemy Pokémon continued to pour forth. Pikachu, use 100,000 volts. Hey, uncle, don't give up. Keep fighting. There are still many who need you. After waiting for a long time, the imagined pain did not come. The trainer instinctively opened his eyes to see that the toucan that had attacked him had now dissipated into tiny specks of light. A young man's voice reached his ears, and he instinctively tried to find the source of the voice. Pikachu, use Iron Tail, 100,000 volts. The familiar voice echoed in his ears again, accompanied by the cries of Pokémon. Hey, uncle, don't be stunned anymore, help. There are still many. Only then did he realize that a young man had suddenly appeared beside him. A Pikachu was under his command, as if he was in an empty space, calmly commanding wave after wave of Pokémon. This person was Yu, who had retreated from the central battlefield to the audience area. After rushing here, Yu immediately joined the resistance, occasionally rescuing trainers and Pokémon in distress. Then, finding an exit, he began to break through. It seemed Pikachu's power alone wasn't enough. At his side, a Gyarados swung its destructive ray, casting a dense, shimmering glow. Yu's situation quickly attracted the attention of the other S organization members, and even more so, the flying-type Pokémon soaring overhead. Consequently, each member and Pokémon joined in the encirclement, attempting to stop him. By this point, Yu's goal was clear, to charge straight through the exit. At that moment, inside the competition venue, Yu was engaged in a desperate attempt to break through. Atop the platform, two peak Pokémon were battling it out, while in the center, the fiercest resistance from the contestants took place. Everywhere they looked, chaos reigned. Fighting was everywhere, and screams echoed from time to time. However, at this moment, over 1,000 meters above the competition venue, above a vast cloud of flying Pokémon, a massive aircraft was being operated. A large S was emblazoned on each of its wings, clearly another masterpiece of the S organization. The entire aircraft was bustling with activity, especially in the cockpit. A figure resembling a commander sat in the cockpit's command chair, listening to the constant stream of information from the personnel around him, his fingers rhythmically tapping the seat handles. This figure was completely shrouded in a black robe, making it impossible to see his face or tell whether he was a man or a woman. His voice was raspy. "What's the situation?" Hearing the question, a woman standing nearby, resembling a secretary, stepped forward and began to summarize their current situation. He even directly recounted some of the performances of the 8 captains. As for why, given this situation, he could know what they were doing? Don't ask, the answer is advanced black technology. Upon hearing that the competition venue, far from completely surrendering and controlling as originally planned, had actually erupted in rebellion, the black-robed man was furious and slammed his hand on the armrest. What a bunch of losers. What the hell are they doing? Instead of capitalizing on such a good advantage, they're playing such a stupid trick on others. I sent them so many bio-Pokémon, are they just using them for show? At this rate, when will our organization achieve world domination? Forget about conquering the Kalos region, announcing our strength to the world and intimidating other factions. They can't even capture the small Kalos League competition venue. What a bunch of losers. Chapter 1037, Tempering. After all, the S organization's original goal was to conquer the world, but it lacked the necessary strength to remain hidden. However, after several previous raids, the S organization gradually gained capital. For example, using materials like the Earth Heart, previously acquired, its doctors have developed so-called bio-Pokémon. These bio-Pokémon are, just as their name suggests, biochemical. Their power is extracted from items like the Earth Heart, and combined with previous Pokémon research, the current bio-Pokémon have been created. However, because most of the previously researched and successful Pokémon were flying-type, this explains the current densely packed flying-type Pokémon that blankets the League's competition venue. This also explains why, after their trainers defeat these Pokémon, the bio-Pokémon don't behave like ordinary Pokémon but instead dissipate into tiny specks of light. Of course, This so-called dissipation is literal, they vanish completely. Although they are bio-Pokemon, they still have some life to them. Many consider this method unacceptable, even inhumane and completely inhumane. But for the evil organization S, who cared? Furthermore, the experimental results after the development of the bio-Pokemon were quite satisfactory. Not only had their strength reached elite levels, but with subsequent extractions, some even reached the quasi-king or king level. Furthermore, they knew no fatigue, only fighting. Even if injured, as long as they weren't fatal, they would continue to fight, almost always with all their might. To better control these deep-level Pokemon and prevent them from becoming too violent or powerful and escaping their control, S had taken every possible measure, implanting chips in their bodies. These chips were controlled by machines. Even at a critical moment, using them as time bombs to achieve their goals was not out of the question. After all, Pokemon are merely tools used by humans in battle, let alone so-called bio-Pokemon. The S organization's members handle these matters with complete ease. However, precisely because of this, one can imagine the anger burning in the black-robed man. After each successful experiment, they had been filled with lofty ambitions, vowing to dominate the world. But now, they'd encountered obstacles before they'd even begun. Snow Leopard and the others are such a bunch of idiots. Ultimately, I have to rely on myself. How is the Terminator experiment going? In response to their boss's question, the secretary quickly flipped through the documents in her hands and rushed to answer. The Destroyer experiment is going very successfully. It appears to have the power to rival, or even surpass, champion-level Pokemon. And to prevent him from losing control, we've implanted a control fragment in him. He's ready to engage in combat at any moment. Oh, very well. In that case, let's activate our secret weapon. Destroyer, this isn't just talk, it's time to unveil him. The black-robed man's voice was undeniable, but at that moment, the secretary seemed hesitant. As an insider, and moreover, his boss's secretary, he had the privilege of participating in this experiment and knew only too well the terrifying power of the Destroyer. If it were unleashed without proper control, not only would the small Kalos region be destroyed, but even the entire country itself. The black-robed figure snorted, his eyes fixed intently on the assistant. Why aren't you going yet? Could it be? A scoffing emanated from the black-robed figure. Hearing this laughter, the assistant shuddered, and without further hesitation, he turned and left to activate the Destroyer. Tonight I will capture Meyer City. From this moment on, I will declare to the world the rise of our S organization. Ho ha ho ha! A slightly manic laugh echoed from the cockpit. While the laughter echoed within the aircraft, a completely different scene unfolded outside. As if to emphasize the current scene, thunderclouds rolled outside, creating a sense of oppressive impending storm. Beneath the rolling thunderclouds, a vast, black mass of flying-type Pokemon loomed. Under the emotionless gazes of each flying-type Pokemon, the battle within the venue raged on. The passage of time showed no sign of diminishing or dissipating the dark clouds of flying-type Pokemon overhead. As his gaze drifted in, the first thing he saw was the situation in the audience, where the battle was currently at its most chaotic. Even with Yu's sudden intervention, in this chaotic situation, it was like a stone dropped into the turbulent sea, instantly sinking into the water without even a ripple. After all, the scene was simply too chaotic, and the S organization's Pokemon support was endless, seemingly endless, with no sign of stopping. By this point in the battle, even Yu was feeling a bit exhausted. It was simply because the situation was so chaotic, and Yu had to maintain a state of mental tension the entire time, that he felt this way after a while. If even Yu, a trainer, was feeling this way, then let alone Pokemon like Pikachu, which required both mental and physical strength, and thus consumed a greater amount of energy. Furthermore, up to this point, Yu hadn't just sent Pikachu into battle, Flintjaw, Snorlax, and Sonic had all been sent in to join the fray. After all, while the scene here seemed extremely chaotic due to the ubiquitous fighting, it wasn't necessarily a good opportunity to hone his skills. Despite the intense fighting and chaotic scenes in the stands, it was actually just a lot of noise with little action. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 1038 Land Joins. Much Ado About Nothing. The reason for this is simply that those Pokemon are only at the elite level. Anything stronger would be near elite. As for Yu, he hasn't encountered any above that level yet. It's unclear whether he's just lucky or unlucky. However, this also allows him to level up less powerful Pokemon like Snorlax, boosting their strength. It's true that Yu never misses an opportunity to improve his Pokemon's strength. Fortunately, for some unknown reason, Yu carries these 3 less powerful Pokemon with him. His current Pokemon are Pikachu, Suicune, Snorlax, Flareon, Sonic Drake, and Moltres. As for the other Pokemon that cannot be carried, Yu doesn't leave them with Professor Oak, but with Serena and Air for safekeeping. This is a way to protect them on a regular basis. Plus, with Ditto at Xiaoxi's, there's just enough for 1 Pokemon per person to help Yu protect them. If this situation had happened any other time, Yu wouldn't have considered breaking through first. He would have immediately rushed to meet Serena and the others and protect them. This opening ceremony, the most lively annual event in the Kalos region, naturally didn't sit idly by in front of the TV in the athletes' village to watch, but had already arrived. Faced with this sudden change from Organization S, they only managed to calm themselves after the initial panic. They had experienced this before, and with so much experience, they were indifferent. The most difficult part was when Yu and the others took the lead in launching the first counterattack. A chaotic fight ensued, but they remained calm. Since they were sitting together, the 3 of them took out the 3 Pokemon Yu had left with them, which served as a form of protection. The combined destructive power of 3 Pokemon was truly immense. With just these 3 Pokemon, they'd already repelled countless waves of the S organization's endless stream of flying-type Pokemon. Consequently, they formed a safe zone around them, with less powerful spectators and trainers whose Pokemon had lost their combat power flocking to their side. Charizard, Gyarados, and Ditto didn't resist Serena and the other 2's orders, as this wasn't their first time. Furthermore, these 3 Pokemon, or indeed all of them, had received orders from Yu before. Even if Yu hadn't issued them orders, they would likely have obeyed the 3 women's commands wholeheartedly. This had nothing to do with their high-level trainers, simply because they were usually the ones responsible for their meals. Xiaoxu, in particular, cooked Pokemon food that almost guaranteed every Pokemon's obedience. Just as the situation in the audience was being completely overwhelmed by the organization's human wave tactics, the situation on the other side of the battle shifted. At this moment, the fiercest battle at the entire venue, aside from the audience seats, was undoubtedly taking place on the central battlefield. After all, setting aside the battles between the other trainers and members of Organization S, the mere clash between 4 Mega-evolved Pokemon was a devastating sight. Everywhere was dented, leaving no untouched area. Despite this, the situation facing Nobuno and his team was dire. In a 3-on-1 situation, even with the enhanced power of their Mega Evolutions, the Tyrannosaurus and his team could only manage to hold off Mega Lucario. With Lucario's relentless attacks, the 3 Pokemon were left with little more than resistance. With each of their attacks, the Pokemon charging forward were pushed back. The situation was precarious, and Tyrannosaurus could be defeated at any moment. How weren't you all so cocky just now? I told you to show off that cockiness. Show me that energy. Yishi's wild laughter rang out, sounding piercing to the ears of Yulongzhenai and the others. Do you really think being able to Mega Evolve is so awesome? Yes, Mega Evolution does make you awesome. Charizard Mega Evolves, use Dragon Claw. What? Yishi was still a bit confused by the sudden voice, but out of the corner of his eye, he saw a flash of light as a black Charizard attacked him. Fuck, you have no moral principles. When facing an evil organization like you, there's no need for moral principles. The thief must first capture the leader, a faint voice echoed beside Yulongzhenai and the others. Then, Lan, whom they had met once before, appeared out of nowhere, arms folded as he watched Charizard attack Yishi. However, Yishi was also a very powerful warrior, and when he sensed danger, he immediately took evasive action. Meanwhile, Mega Lucario, who was still struggling with Mega Steelix, also noticed the danger on his master's side and immediately rushed back to defend. Lan, you're Lan, right? We met once before, I remember you. How come you're here? Yulongzhenai had a deep impression of Lan, especially his Charizard, which had become even more powerful after its Mega Evolution. Are you also a contestant in this league tournament? But why didn't I see you in the crowd just now? Well, I'm not a contestant in this league tournament. I just tracked down a few bugs here. They hurt the people most important to me, so I want revenge, Lan answered calmly, his eyes cold as he looked at Yishi across from him. Where did this guy come from? But it doesn't matter anymore. Lucario, take care of this Charizard as well. Use high-speed move, then wave missiles. Chapter 1039 Deployment. Yishi, with his agility, dodged Charizard's continuous attacks. Lucario, meanwhile, broke free from the encirclement of the Tyrannosaurus and the others and returned to defend his trainer. Even though Yishi was extremely confident in his Lucario's strength, he couldn't help but feel a little nervous when surrounded by 4 powerful, Mega-evolved Pokémon. Takuran, have you finished over there? Come and support me, Yishi urged, and Takuran, who was concentrating on commanding the Tyrannosaurus in battle, wiped the sweat from his forehead. It was like the trainees in the audience facing their organization. Takuran could empathize with them. The opposing trainers were simply too numerous, each carrying between 1 and 6 Pokémon. Most importantly, their Pokémon were also quite powerful, even though he also had the support of organization members and a constant supply of flying-type Pokémon. But facing those motionless pigs was a drain on their energy. Not to mention the Pokémon that still offered strong resistance. The Iron Claw was indeed formidable at first, its massive claws like 2 massive hammers, sending Pokémon flying and instantly losing their combat power wherever it passed. Within the first few minutes, there were already only a handful of Pokémon, but the trainers, faced with this situation, continuously sent out their Pokémon. Remember, this was a league tournament, with over 200 competitors, including trainers comparable in strength to Nobuno and the others. Fortunately, these trainers and Pokémon posed no threat to Takuma and the Ironclaw. It would simply take time to completely eliminate them. But time was their most pressing need, especially with so little pressure. Takuma couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Don't get too involved with the other Pokémon, Scylla. Grab your stronger ones and eliminate them, then go support Lucario. It's worth noting that the 8 captains each brought only one of their strongest Pokémon. They believed that instead of bringing more Pokémon, they could bring a single, stronger one and focus their full attention on commanding, which would be more effective. Upon receiving the order from its trainer, Scylla immediately abandoned the weaker Pokémon and focused on the stronger ones from the morning. Then, with a few powerful crab swarm attacks, they incapacitated them. Few of those Pokémon could withstand Scylla's claws. Even those who could withstand the 3-week attack would eventually succumb, taking a large number of vulnerable Pokémon with them. After just a few waves of this onslaught, both the trainers and the Pokémon were terrified. Takukura was quite pleased with the results. After ordering the other members of Organization S to clean up, he immediately rejoined the fray, bringing with him the recently disengaged Tyranitar. The situation, which had previously been suppressing Ten and Lucario, was instantly reversed. With Takukura and Tyranitar joining their ranks, their strength was significantly strengthened. Even though Tyranitar hadn't achieved a Mega Evolution, the power it exuded was comparable to, and even slightly stronger than, the other Pokémon present. However, after standing still for so long, and especially after Tyranitar's recent struggle to quickly resolve the battle and escape, he had used almost every move with all his might. This had depleted his stamina quite rapidly. As for the Pokémon originally present, their stamina had also been significantly reduced after the repeated battles. The only Pokémon in the group who seemed to be in relatively good spirits was Lan's Charizard. But Takukura and the others remained unfazed. Besides their own Pokémon, they could also freely command numerous flying-type Pokémon in the sky to join the battle. Honestly, that was their current thinking, and that's exactly what they were doing. Instead of immediately sending Lucario and Scylla into the fray, they began commanding their completely clueless flying-type Pokémon to drain the energy of Charizard. Perhaps because of their ability to fly, Salamander and Charizard were the primary targets of these completely clueless, relentless flying-type Pokémon. This depletion strategy quickly reduced the number of flying-type Pokémon. However, the energy consumed by Charizard was also immense. Meanwhile, Lucario and the others, aided by these flying-type Pokémon, were stalling, giving them time to recover. While the tournament venue was a chaotic scene, the scene outside the various corridors was quite different. In stark contrast to the bustling atmosphere inside the tournament venue, the area outside was truly serene. There was barely a soul in sight. If it weren't for the resounding noises inside, or the bustling atmosphere of the morning, one would have mistaken it for a dead city. While not quite dead enough, it was still deserted at this hour. Mire City now hardly resembled a cosmopolitan metropolis. It was hushed, save for the occasional flash of a dark figure. But despite the silence outside, the S organization had come prepared, having considered every detail. For example, the security of the venue was extremely tight, with dense swarms of flying-type Pokémon keeping watch. Every entrance and exit was heavily guarded, not only inside but also outside. Several members of the S organization, dressed in S organization uniforms, could be seen patrolling the area. Chapter 1040 The Powerful Fire-Breathing Dragon. At this moment, outside one of the entrances to the Kalos League tournament venue, a team leader, seemingly the leader, addressed several members of the organization. They had received orders from above to keep out those gates. Anyone approaching, whether Pokemon or human, would be exterminated. Yes, a unified roar echoed. The team leader, pleased with his team's performance, gave another order before continuing his patrol to the next location. Perhaps because the patrol was spread out, the team leaders, who normally had little authority, were now tasked with guarding 2 or 3 gates. Of course, in addition to personnel, their Pokemon were also deployed, and the flying-type Pokemon that filled the sky like a dark cloud were no mere decoration. It was unknown what Organization S had planned, but if they were in danger, those flying-type Pokemon would rush to their aid. Who are you? Stop. This isn't your place. Leave immediately, or we'll be rude. Just as the team leader was about to leave, a member of the team suddenly shouted a warning. This sudden change immediately drew the team leader's attention, but without hesitation, he reached for the Pokeball at his waist, his other hand for the baton strapped to his waist. It seemed these members of the organization weren't in any mood for fun. It wasn't just a well-known team leader who acted this way, several other members followed suit. Each one watched with alarm as the figure emerged from nowhere. The figure was completely shrouded in a large black robe, swaying in the dull breeze. Despite the warnings from the S organization, the newcomer didn't stop, but instead sped up. Well, I'm just asking for directions. Don't be so nervous. This should be the venue for the Kalos League tournament. This is indeed the venue for the Kalos League tournament. The visitor's words seemed to have lowered the captain's guard, and he answered the visitor's question without hesitation. Oh, then, why aren't you letting me in? This isn't your business, is it? The visitor finally stopped and asked with interest. Indeed. This isn't ours. But after today, after tonight, this will be our S organization's territory. So if you know what's good for you, just get out of here and don't force us to do anything. Oh, my. I was only delayed a little bit and just came here now. I didn't expect to encounter such a good thing. It seems like it was really worth the trip. The visitor, Huayu, suddenly became very happy. If you don't accept the toast, you'll have to drink the forfeit. Go, life or death. At the captain's command, he took the lead and threw the Pokeball he had been holding, sending out a cool panther. Immediately following, the members of Organization S also dispatched their Pokemon. Aside from Kubo, a unique Pokemon, the rest of the S organization members dispatched uniformly, all Coyote Hounds. Instantly, the man was surrounded by Pokemon. Each Pokemon bared its teeth, its face fierce and ready to pounce and rip the man to shreds. But the man remained calm, unhurriedly pulling out a Pokeball from his possession and dispatching his own Pokemon. As the enveloping red light faded, a massive Charizard appeared. It didn't possess any overwhelming power, but its mere presence instilled a sense of fear. It's time for Charizard to get out and move around. Take care of these little loons, he said calmly. After repeating his trainer's orders, Charizard also took action. With a powerful flap of its wings, a powerful gust of wind swept in all directions, instantly rendering several weaker coyotes incapable of combat. Those that remained incapacitated had already launched their attacks. However, Charizard was clearly much faster than them, its emerald claws flickering a few times in the now fading darkness. Afterward, only the wailing of the panther and several coyotes could be heard, along with a dull thud of flesh colliding with the ground. The panthers and coyotes, who had been planning to attack the man and Charizard, were rendered incapacitated in a matter of seconds. Faced with this terrifying scene, the team leader and his companions were terrified, their calves trembling. However, due to orders from above and the serious consequences of disobeying the organization's orders, the group remained at their posts. Fortunately, the flying Pokemon soaring in the sky also noticed something was amiss and immediately rushed to their aid. Upon seeing the flying-type Pokémon arriving with their resources, the team leader and the rest of the group breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they had sensed something was amiss and had already used a special device to call out those Pokémon, which was why they arrived so promptly. Furthermore, thanks to their timely calls and careful consideration, 3 of the flying-type Pokémon that arrived to support them were indeed quite powerful and exceptional. One was the near-champion level Tyrannosaurus, while the others were the celestial level Tenabita and Pidgeot. As for the remaining support, they had all reached elite rank. Facing another siege, the man observed these Pokémon with great interest. Judging from his extensive experience in missions, these Pokémon might be quite significant. After all, the man had already noticed the scene above the Alliance venue upon his arrival. It's no wonder, with his years of missions, he was genuinely fascinated by the scene. Chapter 1041 A Bad Situation. Tyrannosaurus 10 Abe Pidgeot. Though merely created beings, devoid of any emotion, they knew only to fight. But at this moment, even these created Pokémon could sense Charizard's aura, which, though barely spreading, was nonetheless incredibly dangerous. Without needing any orders from the S organization, the 3 Pokémon roared and launched their attacks. Even the surrounding elite Pokémon joined in. Oyo, faced with this situation, Charizard, unwilling to be outdone, also unleashed a deafening roar. While this roar wasn't a skill, it sent waves of sound waves radiating outward, leaving those elite Pokémon hiding in front of Charizard in tatters of luck. The mere sound of this invisible roar caused some Pokémon to scatter into tiny specks of light. What's going on? What's happening to these Pokémon? Why aren't they losing their combat ability, but disappearing? The man was also somewhat shocked by the situation before him. Even though he had carried out countless dangerous missions, he had never encountered a scene like this. It was truly shocking. But despite his shock, he then watched the fading light fall into deep thought, but Charizard's performance remained unaffected. Even without any command from its trainer, Charizard remained as fierce as ever. A jet of flame swept through like a blazing dragon, instantly transforming the elite Pokémon in its path into tiny specks of light, merging into the darkness. Meanwhile, the 3 Pokémon, each with elite and quasi-champion strength, were able to hold their own against Charizard's onslaught. Thanks to their insensitivity to pain and their boundless stamina, they were able to occasionally counterattack, though their counterattacks were ineffective. However, as the attacking elite Pokémon dissipated, support quickly arrived from the sky. The previously vacant position was instantly filled, and Charizard was once again under attack. However, Charizard seemed completely uninterested in these elite monsters, its gaze fixed on the 3 more powerful Pokémon, Tyrannosaurus and Salamander. Taiwei lashed out at the 3 Pokémon with the force of the mountain-splitting force, leaving only the faster Pidgeot able to escape. The Tyrannosaurus and Tenabita, both of a higher level, were instantly sent flying by Charizard's blow, crashing down onto the surrounding elite Pokémon, dissipating into tiny specks of light. Facing the fluttering Pidgeot, Charizard assumed it was outmatched and planning to flee. Its eyes sharpened, and with a swift, unfurling wing, it charged forward at lightning speed. With a single earth move, the elite Pokémon surrounding Charizard, along with Pidgeot, were instantly transformed into a sea of stars. Charizard, good opportunity. Use Flame Spray on the Alliance Gate now. After observing for a while, combined with his years of mission experience, he had more or less figured out the reason behind these Pokémon. Therefore, he could only use the opportunity provided by the remaining flying-type Pokémon to arrive and have Charizard blast the gate open. Upon receiving the order, Charizard didn't hesitate, unleashing its ultimate fire-type skill, Big Blast. Searing flames lashed the gate, instantly shattering it. The deafening explosion even sent flying organization members and Pokémon flying behind it careening off. It quickly captured the attention of everyone present. With a gate to the passageway breached, the organization members and Pokémon guarding it were instantly rendered powerless. Passers-by and spectators lingering nearby quickly rushed towards the passageway. Just as they were about to make their move, the flying Pokémon in the sky also began to move. Their target was none other than the people rushing towards the passageway. Human legs were ultimately no match for the wings of the flying Pokémon. Just as the people were about to approach, the flying Pokémon formed a wall in their path. Meanwhile, the Pokémon, distracted by the outside world, once again attacked Charizard. Charizard, use your claws to carve a path for me, the man finally commanded. After receiving the command, Charizard's eyes were sharp, and the flapping of its massive wings resembled rocket thrusters. Amidst the swarm of flying Pokémon, a single emerald light flashed, creating a long, graceful emerald line. As the true green claws vanished, the Pokémon that had once formed a wall of surrounding Pokémon instantly shattered, becoming mere points of light. With Charizard clearing the way ahead, the man strolled in at a leisurely pace. He encountered some fully conscious members of the S organization along the way, but without giving them a chance to resist, he dispatched them all with the same agility. He clapped his hands softly, as if stained with something unclean. Charizard, hold on. Let these people get out. Looking at the crowd swarming toward the normal exit, the man commanded Charizard to help buy time as much as possible. Those rushing out, passing by the man in the passage, simply moved aside, creating a tiny vacuum around him. Thanks to Charizard's cover, the people near the passage were able to escape smoothly. The man finally reached the camera at the entrance and saw the scene unfolding in the venue. It looks like the situation is a bit bad, because his face was completely hidden under the black robe. His expression at the moment could not be seen at all, but his mood at the moment could be seen from his exclamations. Chapter 1042 Turning Point. Hurry, hurry, it's this guy who broke through the gate. Capture him. Amidst the cacophony of shouts, a few voices stood out, their target pointed squarely at the black-robed figure. Accompanying this group of organized individuals were swarms of Pokémon. While these Pokémon flew through the air, similar to the previous group, it was clear that this wave of Pokémon was far more powerful, at least reaching the level of Quasi-King or King. A wave of incomparably cold aura spread, and each Pokémon stared blankly at the black-robed figure. We're surrounded. This is going to be a bit tricky. The black-robed figure finally withdrew his gaze from the scene, gazing at the Pokémon and members of the S organization surrounding him. Though his voice was filled with distress, there was no trace of worry. By this time, Charizard had completed its cover mission. Although many people nearby hadn't evacuated through the passageway, they were stopped by the incoming S organization members and their Pokémon. It was clear that Zhang Yiming, the black-robed man, had witnessed this, but felt helpless. After all, surrounded like this, Charizard alone couldn't possibly handle it so easily. Furthermore, these Pokémon were significantly stronger than before. Despite the overwhelming siege, Charizard didn't hesitate at all. Without even realizing its trainer's orders, it launched an attack on the besieging trainers and Pokémon. A single jet of flame swept out, scorching the swarm of Pokémon, rendering them incapable of combat. With a sweep of its tail, 2 emerald green claw marks pierced the darkness. In a matter of seconds, the vast swarm of Pokémon that had been working were reduced to tiny dots. It was clear that this group of Pokémon were identical to those flying in the sky. However, this time, the Pokémon were like waves, one after another. Even Charizard's fiery attack seemed futile and pale in comparison to the wave after wave of attacks. This was because Charizard used almost all of its strength in every move, holding nothing back. While it had a significant effect on the besieging Pokémon, it also severely drained their stamina. Not counting the previous battle outside and the current one, it had only been less than 10 minutes, and Charizard was already panting. Everyone, attack. We must capture this guy. Otherwise, we'll all be in trouble if the higher-ups blame us. Faced with Charizard's state, the surrounding S organization naturally noticed what was happening. Each one, as if pumped with energy, excitedly commanded the Pokémon to join the attack on Charizard. In this situation, even a formidable creature like Charizard was struck by several attacks. However, thanks to Charizard's strength, these attacks only inflicted minimal damage. I'm honored to tell you that, due to the previous quest, I brought more than one Charizard with me. It's time for Dragonite to stretch its legs. With a crisp thud, the Pokéball opened. The slightly portly Dragonite appeared at this moment. Unlike Charizard's reserved form, Dragonite exuded an overwhelming dragon power upon its appearance. Under the overwhelming, invisible aura of majesty, even the unconscious Pokémon around it became somewhat sluggish. Perhaps this was due to the suppression of its bloodline. Despite being surrounded by so many Pokémon, Dragonite, despite only just appearing, showed no sign of fear, but instead appeared eager to fight. The pair of small wings behind him fluttered a few times, and Dragonite, its body, far from its wings, shot out at an incredible speed. Lightning shrouded his hands, and he unleashed lightning palm strikes with incredible speed, echoing through the air wherever he moved. Wherever the lightning passed, tiny flashes of light erupted again. Although the venue was shrouded in darkness, the lights remained bright due to the opening ceremony. Perhaps this was because, amidst the darkness, a symbol of hope and light still existed. This light would gradually grow stronger until it once again dispelled the darkness. At least, those still in the venue, whether willingly or not, were fighting and expending their energy for this cause. The commotion on this side quickly drew the attention of those on the other battlefields. While they had noticed the situation, they were too busy to pay attention. The members of the organization, upon witnessing the scene, were naturally filled with anxiety. But no matter how anxious they were, it was futile, as their high-level forces had already been almost completely tied down. Even if the remaining forces employed a human wave against some powerful Pokémon, according to Lianjia, it would simply be a waste of time. And it was only a matter of time. On the other hand, the trainers were filled with joy, for this scene gave them hope of escaping, of surviving the clutches of the evil organization. Evil organizations are generally considered to be bad at doing things like stealing other people's Pokémon. Furthermore, trainers with such strength had already established deep bonds with their Pokémon. How could they allow the bad guys to snatch them away so easily? They would surely fight back, just as they were doing now. Even though they knew they were outmatched, they still fought to the end. This was the tacit understanding and shared determination between trainers and Pokémon. It looks like you're in a very bad situation right now. How about you retreat now, and I can pretend nothing happened. Otherwise, if I really pursue this, you won't be able to escape. Chapter 1043 Do appears. Looks like you're in a bad spot right now. How about you retreat now? I can pretend nothing happened. Otherwise, if I really investigate, you won't be able to escape. Kaluna and the others had of course noticed the commotion the black-clad man was making in the audience, especially since the opposing organization had suffered heavy losses. They also knew the black-robed man responsible was probably on their side. Blustoad uses Freeze Ray. Snow Leopard ignored Kaluna, but his actions made clear his current stance. Since that's the case, I won't hold back. With a turnaround in the situation, Kaluna's worries finally settled, allowing her to peacefully give Snow Leopard an all-out fight. Just as Calorie and Snow Leopard were giving it their all, the situation in the audience grew more and more serious. Yu was completely drawn in by the commotion. Knowing that he was no match for such a large-scale attack, he knew he was in a difficult position. Seeing the black-robed man's prowess, he immediately ordered his Pikachu and the others to charge at him, aiming to rejoin him. Yu's charge actually managed to create a gap. The black-robed man quickly noticed Yu's movements and immediately deployed two powerful Pokémon, Charizard and Dragonite, to clear a path, intending to rejoin Yu. Under such pressure from both sides, the organization suffered heavy losses, both in members and Pokémon. The sky, once thick with dark clouds, was now obscured by the moonlight. Now, the moonlight, now shrouded by the army like a dark cloud, began to pierce through the sky. Yu also spotted the black-robed man approaching to rejoin him and immediately planned to open another passage. Besides the passage the black-robed man had just claimed to have opened, the other passages in the venue were too heavily guarded. Even if he added the strength of several more skilled trainers, he still couldn't force the passages open. But now, things were different. After several attacks, a gap finally appeared, and without hesitation, Pikachu and other Pokémon began to rush through it. Stop them! The members of Organization S also noticed this and immediately went crazy. They all rushed to this side, because the gap just now had allowed 1/12 of the entire venue to escape. If this gap was opened, and with so many trainers helping to defend it, even more people would escape. However, all this was in vain, because the black-robed man, with the strength of Charizard and Dragonite, quickly reunited with Yu. There was no further exchange of words, but they tacitly began to resist, destroying the Pokémon that rushed to support them. At the same time, they bravely moved towards the exit. Even at this moment, Chugao also had 2 or 3 semi-champion level Pokémon certificates. However, the power displayed by this Dragonite was far greater than Charizard's. Dragonite unleashed a powerful, sky-dropping move, Dragon Dive. The enraged Dragon Shadow flaunted itself wantonly, slamming down fiercely. The resulting massive wave of energy instantly reduced even the most powerful Pokémon to tiny pinpricks of light. This added to the already illuminating darkness. Meanwhile, Charizard and Dragonite signaled their full power. Yu and Pikachu, of course, were not to be outdone. Their 100,000-volt surge transformed numerous Pokémon into points of light. Unconsciously, You even engaged the black-robed man in a contest to see who could eliminate the most Pokémon. This was truly a difficult situation, especially for the organizers. I didn't expect you've grown so much in strength after not seeing you for so long. Your Pikachu Volt attack, in particular, is becoming increasingly powerful. The sudden words from the black-robed man startled Yu, who was still concentrating on dealing with the Pokémon before him. Before he could ask, the black-robed man had already taken off his hat, revealing a delicate and handsome face that bore a passing resemblance to Yulong's eye. Dragon Envoy, Dragon-type Xiaoguang do. How come you're here? Yu exclaimed in surprise, then asked with a touch of curiosity. He knew that Dragon-type Xiaoguang do belonged to the Kanto Pokémon League. Even if there were missions, they wouldn't likely cross regions, as each region had its own Xiaoguang and champion. Unless it was a truly urgent matter, and even for the Arceus organization, the events unfolding at this moment were only just beginning, even the players wouldn't be willing to come so soon. The Kanto region was simply too far from the Kalos region. Hey, isn't Nobuno participating in the Kalos Regional League tournament? I came to cheer him on, but I didn't expect to encounter something like this. But it seems I'm glad I came. It's a good thing you encountered this, otherwise things would be much more difficult right now. Yu was also somewhat relieved, because the arrival of a regional champion was an extremely powerful new force. Moreover, Du was already quite powerful. If it weren't for the superior stats of the Ice King, Kona, he would have been the undisputed champion. What's going on now? Du, a skilled Pokémon hunter with years of experience, immediately snapped interaction and quickly asked Yu about the situation. Yu briefly summarized what he knew at the moment. Even as they chatted, the Pokémon's attack continued unabated. However, it seemed that after the initial cannon fodder had been dealt with, the remaining Pokémon were mostly stronger. Or maybe it was because of the manipulation of some people that the Pokémon that came over here were no longer Pokémon whose strength was lower than the king level. Chapter 1044 Breakaway. Although the besieging Pokémon gradually transformed into beings of elite-level power, fortunately, they didn't create many Pokémon of this power. A visual count estimated only a few dozen. However, these few dozen caused a slight shift in the orderly retreat of the audience, which had previously been achieved by opening a gap. While the audience also had considerable training in strength, they were ultimately no match for Du's strength. The gap that had been opened gradually began to heal, but wherever these elite-level Pokémon moved, they were often followed by the loss of combat power among other Pokémon and a sense of helplessness among their trainers. This situation is getting a bit tricky. Although I'm on a mission and came here on my way here, I only have Dragonite and Charizard with me. Du frowned. If he had just been watching one person, he might not have been so fearful. After all, the strength of Charizard and Dragonite was enough to protect him. Yet, in this situation, there were still many innocent onlookers. Why can't you bring more Pokémon? Why do people like you always have to bring one or two Pokémon? Do you like to show off? Yu was almost at his wit's end. You guys are obviously powerful, yet you only bring one or two. Ordinary trainers like us wish we had more Pokémon slots. It can't be helped. We're more powerful. Usually, when we go out, we only bring one or two powerful Pokémon. Too many seems useless. Du was still able to joke even in this situation, handsomely brushing his bangs. Yu, your Pikachu has already reached the king level. I believe your other Pokémon should not be weak either. Send them out quickly. Having one more helper now is a helper. The opponent's human wave tactics are really annoying. This is not a solution. The stamina of my Dragonite and Charizard will be gradually consumed. How can we fight the final boss? Fighting the final boss. Why does such a serious matter sound so easy and carefree when it comes to you? It feels like playing a game, that's how it is. It's not you weaklings who are dragging me down. I guess we should have fought the final boss by now. Okay, stop arguing and send out your Pokémon quickly. Your Pikachu is barely strong enough, but your Pokémon like Sonar are not enough now. Send out a few Pokémon with king-level combat power quickly. Under Du's relentless urging, Yu finally deployed his two remaining trump cards and returned Impala and the other Pokémon to their Pokéballs. Du had a point. Instead of hiding, it would have been better to give Du's Dragonite and Charizard a bit more stamina for the final battle. After all, dealing with these small lawless was just a minor battle. Suicune, Molters, get ready to fight. Water flame low barely in the air, The two opposing attributes of water and fire swept over the surroundings with overwhelming force. The surrounding Pokémon began to retreat to the side wherever they passed. It was simply because the combined power of water and fire was so overwhelming, even though the surrounding Pokémon were comparable in strength to Moltres. After all, the sheer force of the near-god Dragonite was enough to instill a certain fear in the surrounding Pokémon. And that was even more so when it came to fully legendary Pokémon. Just like the half-bloodline position, no one could escape it. You, I can't believe you captured a new legendary beast. Moltres, Du also seemed particularly experienced. But only for a moment, before he quickly let out a relieved smile. That's true, you've always had great luck. Meeting Moltres isn't uncommon, and now it's perfect. With Moltres and Suicune joining us, our chances of victory are greatly increased. Suicune and Moltres had barely emerged from their Pokeballs, yet they displayed remarkable ferocity. As if sensing the powerful aura emanating from Charizard and Dragonite, the two legendary beasts felt pressured, but their pride wouldn't allow them to surrender. Therefore, they had no choice but to find another way to achieve victory, to eliminate as many of the enemies as possible. The combined power of Moltres and Suicune might not rival Dragonite, but thankfully, these two Pokémon worked in perfect harmony. They fought back and forth, attacking and defending, even against opponents of the same caliber. Charizard and Dragonite could sense the two legendary beasts' utter devotion. Although at their age, they'd long since grown indifferent to certain matters and lacked the youthful fervor of Suicune and the others, at that moment, the two Pokémon exchanged a glance and gradually joined the fray. It was precisely because of the presence of these four Pokémon that a battle became one-sided. The previously healed gap quickly reopened, and the crowd, seeing this, instinctively began to rush toward the entrance. The Pokémon, capable of flight 3 times, now became the ultimate defensive barrier. The situation here has almost stabilized. Go help Nabuno and the others now. I'll evacuate this group and go help Miss Kaluna. Yu hesitated for a moment, but after taking in the situation, he agreed and turned to run back toward the center of the venue. Okay, Dragonite and Charizard, give it a good push. The recent arrival of Moltres and Suicune had relieved much of the pressure on Charizard and Dragonite, allowing them to recover a bit of their stamina. It wouldn't last long, but it was enough for Charizard and Dragonite. After this battle, only 3 or 4 elite-level Pokémon remained. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 1045 Battle. While the situation in the audience had briefly eased, the battle in the center of the venue, after Yu's departure, had taken a sharp turn for the worse, transforming into a completely different scene. You were so impressive at the beginning, weren't you? You're still angry now, show me one. Yoshi, clutching his katana, sneered at the sullen Nabuno Yu across from him. It turned out that from the beginning of the battle, Nabuno Yu had the advantage due to the sheer number of Pokémon, and the sudden and powerful arrival of Arashi had made the situation even more one-sided. However, Lucario gradually gained control of the situation, leveraging his superior strength to crush the opponent. Under this pressure, even Charizard's own strength, greatly enhanced by its Mega Evolution, gradually became futile. It was like a fight between several wolves and a single tiger. While these wolves were certainly capable, the tigers were ultimately superior. Furthermore, the wolves' victory over the lions was entirely due to their unity and sheer numbers. However, the situation at this moment involved the dragons and Nabuno. There was no discussion between them, as they were only a temporary team. Furthermore, each Pokémon was inherently weaker than the Tiger Mega Lucario. Their only advantage was numbers, which wasn't particularly significant. After all, the 8 captains of the S organization were on par with the league's best. Even Du could outmaneuver Charizard or Dragonite, not to mention the other captains, who were considered among the strongest. If this was the case on one side, let alone Takuma facing off against another group of Pokémon trainers. I wonder if Takuma had some kind of quirk? In addition to the previously dispatched crayfish, they unexpectedly unleashed a giant mantis. These two Pokémon swept away the remaining competitors like autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves, leaving only a few stronger Pokémon trainers struggling to hold out. But at least this side's human wave strategy was a success. It would have been extremely difficult for Takukura to escape immediately, even with two extremely powerful Pokémon. But they were facing a group of Pokémon with infinite potential, and the cooperation between their trainers. Nobuno, I say, this is too much to bear. Your brother is, after all, the renowned Dragon Master of the Kanto region, Tonado. And you're going to embarrass him like this. Faced with a precarious situation facing Nobuno and his team, Yu finally rushed back. What? Your brother is actually the Dragon King of the Kanto region, but why is your brother the Dragon King of a region, yet you're so weak? It seemed as if they'd been suppressed by the opposing Lucario for so long, and a shadow of a shadow had formed in their hearts. Upon hearing such shocking news, Xiaozhi and Lan couldn't help but scrutinize Oolong's eye. However, Oolong's eye clearly didn't care about the criticism. Instead, he seemed anxious at Yu's arrival. Yu, why are you here? Didn't we tell you to leave and evacuate the crowd? How could that be? Did you hit a wall too? Don't worry. I've already taken care of things over there, and I just rushed back to help you. Yu walked over and patted Oolong's eye's shoulder. Behind him were the two legendary beasts, Suicune and Moltres, one water and one fire. It was a truly impressive moment, and coupled with his flamboyant appearance, everyone present couldn't help but wince. Yu, what are you doing here? If you're leaving, you shouldn't come back. It would be best to just break out and get reinforcements. What's the point of running back? Even with all of us together, we're no match for the Lucario over there. While Oolong's eye was delighted that Yu had arrived to fight alongside them once again, he couldn't help but feel a bit worried. Don't worry. The main characters always appear last, right? Suicune, Moltres, faced with their master's sudden question, even after the intense battle just now, Moltres and Suicune were full of momentum. The pupils of the opposing player couldn't help but shrink. Even though he was extremely confident in his Pokémon, he still seemed cautious when facing two legendary beasts. As for his stunned companion beside him, Yu calmly stated that this was standard procedure. After all, he had seen their expressions countless times. At first, he might have been incredibly proud, but as time went on, he seemed to grow numb. Alright, you've worked hard, leave the rest to me. Yu patted Oolong's eye's shoulder again and stepped forward. Never mind, let's just go at it together. I believe in your abilities, but wouldn't it be safer if we all went together? Faced with such good intentions, Oolong's eye didn't hesitate and simply refused, immediately summoning his Tyrannosaurus and beginning the battle once again. Not only them, but also, inspired by Oolong's eye, Xiaozhi and the others also joined in the fray. Alright, since that's the case, then let's all go at it together. But everyone's Pokémon are already exhausted, so I'll take the lead and you can help with the support. This time, no one objected to Yu's offer. Molten, you'll fight on your own from now on. Then, Suicune, let's begin. Under the bewildered gazes of the crowd, Yu and Suicune suddenly transformed, and streams of colorful light began to radiate outward. After a month of intensive training, they had finally mastered their movements. In just a few breaths, Yu and Suicune had synchronized their breathing. Suicune, in his mega-evolved form, truly began to appear before everyone's eyes. Chapter 1046, Encirclement. Suicune, use Water Cannon, Axolotl, use Dragon Wave, Steel Back, use Destruction Beam, Charizard, use Flame Jet, Grenin, use Water Shuriken, Flame. The battle was about to break out. After Yu gave the first order, Nobuo Urayu and the others followed suit. Yishi felt his face darken. His Lucario was undoubtedly powerful, but looking at the dazzling array of skills from the opposing team, he felt a sense of uncertainty. His mind was racing, and he didn't stop talking. He quickly gave the order, Lucario, use Bone Strike. 6 skills followed closely behind, attacking Lucario from different directions. At this point, no matter how powerful Lucario was, it was no match for 4. He had barely managed to block 2 attacks when Steelix's Destruction Beam struck him from the side. As this side's defenses completely crumbled, Water Shurikens and Moltres Jets of Flame followed, unleashing a flurry of ice and fire upon Lucario. As Lucario's form was gradually engulfed by the barrage of attacks, Aishi finally let out a panicked cry. Smiles began to form on the faces of Nobuno Mikurayo and the others, but they were short-lived as a dark figure suddenly burst forth from the explosion. A flash of white staff sent Steelix's massive form careening backward, carrying Greninja with it. Lucario burst forth from the explosion, her eyes now filled with violence. She clutched the shadowy bone staff tightly, ready to strike at any moment. It's just a melee, isn't it? I've never backed down from a melee fight before. Suicune, Molters, go ahead. Perhaps fueled by the heated atmosphere at the moment, Yuyu's mind was abruptly lost as he gave Suicune his orders. However, Yuyu was also quite confident. With each blow, neither Lucario nor Suicune gained the slightest advantage. However, with a special connection to Suicune, Yuyu could sense that something was amiss with Suicune. Suicune, distance yourself from the enemy. Use Freeze Beam. Decisive, seemingly sobered by the excitement, Yuyu immediately ordered Suicune to distance himself. Directly in the middle of the two sides, he used Freeze Beam to block and divide them. However, Luhan wasn't completely enraged at that moment, so he didn't care about the ice wall before him. With a swing of his drumstick, the ice wall shattered, and he launched another attack at Suicune. But before Lucario could even get close, he felt a sudden, powerful gust of wind blast his forehead. Instinctively, he raised his bone club, attempting to block the blow. A powerful force sent him careening backward. Steelix, having just been sent flying, had risen again, living up to its name and becoming the jungle's most cunning hunter. Taking advantage of Lucario's moment of inattention, he struck from the side, while Irontail, seeking revenge for his earlier blow, took Lucario by surprise. With this sudden attack, Lucario was instantly sent flying again, dealing heavy physical damage. Yishi, you're in such a mess. You only faced a few imps. You're truly exhausted. You need to recover when you get home. See how I'll help you avenge yourself. Mantis uses Alloy Claws. Ironclaw uses Destruction Ray. Tokukura's slightly teasing voice echoed from the side. However, without giving the others time to consider, a flash of red lightning flashed, followed by an attack of orange energy. Caught off guard, Tyranitar and Steelix, dodging, were instantly rendered incapable of combat. Steelix's immense size shielded the other Constitution-type Pokémon. After losing their combat power, the two Pokémon could no longer maintain their Mega Evolutionary states and retreated. How did you get here? Are you done over there? Although Yishi felt a little annoyed at Tokukura's reckless snatching of his prey, he also understood the priorities. The prolonged battle had drained Lucario's stamina. If the situation dragged on like this, he would likely be the loser. Therefore, while he felt a little annoyed, he didn't show it. Oh, you mean those trainers? While they're a bit stronger than the ones on your side, they're just that much weaker. After I've dealt with the stronger ones, I'll leave the rest to my men. After all, if we have to do everything, what good are those men? After hearing this, everyone's attention instinctively turned to the other battlefield nearby. The trainers, who had previously held an advantage in numbers, were now surrounded by a dense swarm of Pokémon. Yuyu and the others felt a tingling sensation on their scalps as they watched. The scene next door had unfolded so silently that they hadn't even noticed that trainers on that side were being surrounded. Look at the sky, previously lit only by a few scattered stars, had suddenly regained its brightness, and the Pokémon that had once densely covered the sky had vanished. But it was precisely because of this scene that people would think of the group of Pokémon nearby that were besieging contestants like themselves. Although they didn't know what the current situation was, the only thing they could be sure of was the group above. The Pokémon had probably already launched an all-out attack. What should you do now? It seems like we're surrounded, with no way out. By this point in the battle, both Yulong and I and the others were exhausted both physically and mentally. When the enemy comes, we'll fight them. When the water comes, we'll block it with earth. And after such a long battle, I don't believe we're the only ones tired. I believe the other side must be tired too. Chapter 1047 Dragonite Mega Evolution. Nabuno, Yanrong, you two should step back. Salamander and Steelix have both lost their ability to fight. Leave this to us, and you go help the other trainers. You grabbed Nabuno, who was about to step forward to continue fighting with Tokukura. He never thought that the very words he had said to Yu would happen to him just a moment later. Let's go, let's help the other trainers. The strongest Pokémon we have are no longer able to fight, and it's useless for us to stay here. Instead of this, why not go help the other trainers? Yanrong took the initiative to step forward and persuade Nabuno. You better keep working hard. You should also work hard on my part, don't worry, haha that's such a touching scene. You're making us look even more like villains. Sorry. But since you already think I'm a villain, I should act like one, right? Don't go anywhere, just stay here. Tokukura waved his hand with a sneer on his face. The giant mantis and the iron claw lobster knew what their master meant. Immediately, thousands of troops blocked the direction that Yulong Zinai, Yanrong and the others had said they were leaving from. Yishi, why are you still standing there? Come help. You're not really going to be overwhelmed by these little brats, are you? Stop talking nonsense. Lucario, come on too, Yishi snorted coldly. He clearly had some grudge against Tokukura, but in this case, he accepted his fate. After receiving the order, Lucario also blocked their last escape route. Faced with enemies surrounding them from all four directions, Yu also consciously stood back to back, forming a circle and assuming a defensive posture. Ho Yu, you've only been gone for a moment, and you're already so disheveled. And Zinai, didn't you say you'd surpass me? Why are you so defeated by such a simple challenge? This doesn't seem like my proud little brother. A sudden, heroic laugh, a shrill chuckle, shattered the solemn atmosphere. Two roars echoed, and a dark figure descended from the sky. With it came two powerful auras. Facing this newcomer, even formidable figures like Tokukura and Yishishi hesitated to act rashly, their eyes fixed on the sudden appearance of the black-robed figure. Brother Do, after hearing Yu and Yulong Zinai addressed the black-robed man, Lan, Xiaoxin, and Yanrong finally understood the identity of the man before them. The Dragon King of the Kanto region, Do. Oh, I didn't expect someone in Kalos to know me. What an honor. After greeting Yulong Zinai and Yu, Do overheard the conversation behind him. He rubbed his head, a little embarrassed, not looking like a king at all. Brother, why are you here? Didn't you say you wouldn't come until you found a way? What mission? How can it compare to watching my brother perform in the Pokemon League? Do ruffled his brother's hair affectionately. While the atmosphere here suddenly seemed a little cheerful, Tokukura and Aishi were already extremely solemn. Even the Pokemon they had originally sent out to intercept them were sent back. They stood before their trainers, ready to fight. King of Heaven, Do, how come even you've heard of me? If so, why don't you run? Perhaps I can spare your lives, but otherwise, you'll be in the Alliance prison. Do's words were filled with sharpness and aggression, completely lacking the humility he had shown before Yanrong and the others. Arrogant. Truly arrogant. Even if you're a dragon-type king of heaven, what can you do? We've fought kings of the Alliance before. Be careful not to get caught with your boasts. Dangerous auras emanated from Yishi and Tokukura. Facing the onslaught of these two invisible auras, Do stepped forward, emanating an even more powerful aura, like the awakening of an ancient, angry dragon. Just because you two are so arrogant. I didn't want to use it originally, intending to save it for the next King of Kings finals, against Kona, but now you're honored. Now's the time to unleash my full power. Dragonite Mega evolves. Do touched his neck, and the same scene as before repeated itself. Only this time, after the Mega Evolution, the power exuded by Dragonite was even more terrifying. Looks like you really can't hide your weakness anymore. Mantis Mega evolves. Under such pressure, Tokukura finally Mega evolved his Pokemon. Interesting, really interesting. I thought evolution keys and evolution stones were very rare, but today they were like cabbage in the market. But all the same, let's just consider it a warm-up before the King of Kings finals. Let you own my Dragonite. It was quite rare that Do's fighting spirit was actually aroused. Go help the other trainers. I haven't evacuated the spectator seats yet, and I need your help over there too. Leave this to me. At this moment, Do's figure seemed particularly majestic. Yulong Zinai sniffed, wiped away the non-existent tears, and was dragged away by the others to help in other areas. Yu did the same, for he was very self-aware. Even if his current Suicune had some fighting power, he would be no match for Tokukura and the other 12 people at full strength. It was best for a newbie not to interfere in a fight between the big guys. Okay, now that they're gone, it's time to wrap things up. Dragonite, use Dragon Dive. Charizard, go hold the Crawdad. Mantis, use Destruction Ray. Lucario, use Wave Missile. The Dragon Shadow once again covered Dragonite's figure. Facing the attacks of Destruction Ray and Wave Missile, Dragon Dive was incredibly fast, dodging the Destruction Ray and engaging the Wave Missile head-on. Lucario, use Bone Slam to block it all. Chapter 1048 The Powerful Dragonite. The swooping Dragon Shadow collided directly with Lucario. However, The force of the dragon's swooping attack was too immense. Even though Lucario used Bone Strike to block it, the bone club it conjured was broken in two by the overwhelming force. Two deep grooves were worn into the battlefield. Even so, Lucario couldn't quite defend against the attack. He was sent flying backward, landing heavily on the ground. The bone clubs he had been holding tightly in his hands also began to dissipate, along with Lucario, now in his mega-evolved state. Lucario, Yishi's expression darkened, but out of concern for Lucario, he hurried forward to check on him. "Hey, Ichisho, what's wrong with you? Are you really exhausted from all the fighting lately? This isn't like you normally. How did you lose your combat ability so easily?" Ichisho ignored Takukura's slightly terrified complaints, his hands clenched tightly as he investigated Lucario's current condition. Takukura didn't know, but how could Ichisho, Lucario's trainer, not know? Even someone as powerful as Lucario couldn't be instantly incapacitated by Dragon Knight's Dragon God Dive. It was simply because Lucario's previous battle with Nebuno and the others had drained so much of his stamina. Plus, Dragon Knight hadn't intended to hold back from the start, going all out. "Well, now that one's out, you're the only one left." Watery and Dragon Knight both looked at Takukura and the Claws, who had just regained some movement after being affected by the Destruction Ray. Giant uses Alloy Claw, Dragon Knight uses Lightning Palm, a pure clash of power. However, the two Pokémon were incredibly fast, practically splitting apart in a split second, their attacks accompanied by streaks of light. Both Pokémon were renowned for their speed, and their attacks were equally powerful. Dragon Knight uses Earth Throw, Giant uses high-speed move to dodge. It's no use, Dragon Knight, whether it works or not is not up to you. Giant uses Shadow Clone, then Bullet Punch, Dragon Knight blocks it. Facing Giant's bullet-like swing of its giant claws, Dragon Knight didn't dodge, steadying itself with the flapping of its short wings, allowing Giant's Bullet Punch to strike its thick belly. Even Dragon Knight, despite its large belly, offered considerable defense against this powerful bullet punch. However, when Mantis's bullet punch struck Dragon Knight's stomach, the dents and tremors of Dragon Knight's belly were clearly visible. Dragon Knight's eyes bulged involuntarily, but before Mantis could react, Kuwailong grabbed it with lightning speed and held it tightly. Then, he used the opportunity to launch an Earth Throw. By this time, even though Takuma and Mantis had reacted, it was already difficult for them to break free. Mantis, use high-speed move. Mantis, use Alloy Claws. Mantis, use Shadow Clone. Takuma barked out commands after commands, skill after skill. Even though Mantis used every skill his trainer had ordered, he still couldn't escape Dragon Knight's warm embrace. His constant struggles made Dragon Knight's hold grow tighter. He himself was suddenly exhausted from the continuous use of his skills. In this situation, Dragon Knight had almost completed the prelude to Earth Throw, and the skill was nearing its end. By then, Mantis had long since lost the strength to resist, its body slamming directly into the ground. Its force was so immense that cracks appeared on the ground, but it seemed as if that wasn't enough. Dragonite didn't soar high again after using Earth Throw, as other Pokémon do. Instead, it simply gained a certain distance before its portly form slammed back down. Mantis was clearly buried deep underground, creating a deep pit. "This is like a mountain falling on my head." Even Yishi, who had just retrieved his Lucario, was stunned by the swiftness of the scene. "How is it going? Let's see if your Mantis still has the ability to fight after using those two moves. Don't look down on me." Mantis uses Alloy Claws. That's when Dragonite uses Flame Jet. As expected of Mantis's trainer, Takukura knew Mantis's limits. Therefore, even though Mantis was buried deep in the hole created by Dragonite, he could still tell what Mantis was doing. However, before Mantis could even crawl out of the hole, Dragonite's Flame Jet followed, covering the entire hole. Well, it's time to end this fight. Facing a counterattack like the Flame Jet, with its exceptionally effective damage, your Crab Claw should be able to fight. That's not necessarily true. Claw. Amidst the spray of orange-red flames, a red figure burst forth from the blaze. Its gleaming fist surged with the force of a wave, its blast splitting the flames that had once resembled a fiery dragon into waves wherever it passed. Dragonite's alloy claws grew larger in size before it delivered a powerful punch to Dragonite's face. Under the force of the blow, Dragonite merely tilted its head to the side, unsteady for a moment, but quickly regained its balance. Under the somewhat incredulous gaze of Crab Claw, it slowly tilted its head back, its face against the alloy claws. At such close range, Crabclaw could still see the flicker of fire in Dragonite's eyes. Oh, Dragonite seems angry. That's going to be tough. Chapter 1049, Battle with Blastoise. Quick, as Dew's words fell, Dragonite launched its counterattack. Feeling the pain radiating from his face, Dragonite's face revealed a sinister smile. Simultaneously, an emerald green light emanated from his palm, accompanied by his massive tail. Before Mantis could react, he launched a Dragon Claw strike at its face. Instinctively reacting to the danger, just as the claw was about to reach Mantis's face, the alloy claw blocked its path, causing the two attacks to collide. But it wasn't over yet. Although he had some experience with Mantis blocking his Dragon Claw, Dragonite didn't hesitate. With a powerful jerk of his massive tail, Mantis's slender body buckled almost like a shrimp, and then it slammed heavily to the ground again, leaving the exact same hole that Mantis had created earlier. Dragonite seemed to have learned his lesson. If his last hit wasn't powerful enough, he'd make his next one even more powerful. Orange energy gathered in his mouth, the prelude to his destruction beam. In just 2 breaths, the energy for the destruction beam was fully accumulated, and then he launched an unreserved attack. As the aftermath of the explosion began to dissipate, the Pokémon that had been fighting ceased their attacks. They seemed to feel that the outcome would only be determined after the aftermath of the explosion, as it might determine whether their continued battle was truly meaningful. The aftermath of the explosion dissipated, and the crater created by Mantis was accompanied by a brilliant flash of light. Did you lose? Takukura saw Mantis, now incapable of fighting and out of its Mega Evolution. As if all its strength had been drained, it collapsed to its knees, its eyes filled with resentment. So I'm saying it's too early for you to stop me. Dew's words were merciless, but he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. If Mantis hadn't already consumed a lot of energy fighting on the other side, defeating it might have been possible, but it would have taken a very long time. And what he lacked most was time. Dew had already noticed the peak-level battle taking place on the platform. As a top Pokémon trainer, he had to get involved no matter what. And to do that, he had to end the battle quickly. With Mantis incapacitated, Charizard, with the help of Dragonite, also swiftly defeated Scylla. With their trump cards incapacitated, Takukura and the other two seemed as powerless as their Pokémon. They remained silent, seemingly lost in thought, but more than anything, they seemed deeply shaken. All of this was a good thing for the trainers, though. Without the obstruction of these two top Pokémon trainers, their progress seemed much smoother. With the combined efforts of the trainers qualified to participate in the league tournament, the S organization members, even with their massive numbers, couldn't gain the slightest advantage. Especially with the addition of Yu and the others, the tide of victory began to tilt even more strongly in Yu's favor. After dispatching Takukura and Yishi, Dew quickly rushed to the platform to join the fray. As for why Charizard or Dragonite wouldn't have carried him there faster, it was simply because the battle on the platform was too chaotic. If Charizard or Dragonite lost their balance, he would have been slammed down. He would have become the first elite-level trainer in the league's history to die from a high-altitude fall. Dragon-type Supreme Dew, I didn't expect you to show up here. It seems we've completely overlooked your presence, completely disrupting our plans. You truly deserve death. Snow Leopard had naturally noticed Dragonite and Charizard, who had suddenly joined the fray, interrupting the fight between Blastoise and Gardevoir. As the leader of the evil organization's battle group, Snow Leopard was well informed about the Pokémon League, especially the island nation's top fighters, champions, and supremes. Therefore, he could immediately recognize the Dragon-type Supreme Dew emerging from the high steps. Really? But why don't I think so? These Pokémon must have been the work of your organization, right? To have come up with such a result, your S organization must have done a lot of wicked things. Especially with this operation you launched, causing so much damage and loss to the Pokémon League in Kalos and the people of Mire City. So, if you put it that way, shouldn't you be the ones who deserve death? Although he had a smile on his face, Dew's words were filled with coldness, completely different from the older brother next door that you usually encountered. Those who achieve great things don't care about trivial matters. Anyone who has accomplished great things has come through mountains of blood and gore. Let alone sacrificing a small city like Mire, even if it meant sacrificing the entire Kalos region, we wouldn't hesitate. Ho 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 ho! The Snow Leopard's expression became incomparably ferocious. It seems you're truly hopeless. Then let me calm you down and clear your head, Dragonite. Use Dragon Dive. In that case, Let's help Gardevoir use Shadow Ball, it's useless. True strength absolutely determines fate. Blastoise, use high-speed spin. Blastoise, spinning at high speed, faced Shadow Balls coming from all directions and Dragonite swooping down from the sky. It felt like a true defense. Under these two powerful attacks, Blastoise tucked its limbs and head into its shell, and the high-speed spin neutralized most of the force, so much so that even after the attack, a faint reflection of light could be seen on its shell. Chapter 1050 Siege. Blustock, we're counterattacking. Use Water Cannon. Blastoise, previously on full defense, instantly revealed its limbs and head. The two gleaming cannons on its back, now aimed at Dragonite and Gardevoir, were now under Blastoise's command. Bang! The sound of two powerful artillery shells rang out simultaneously, like two water dragons charging out in anger, their fangs bared, claws bared, as they charged directly towards Dragonite and Gardevoir. Dragonite, use Destruction Beam to block it. Gardevoir, use Teleport, then Telekinesis, then Psychic. While Gardevoir used Agility, Dragonite opted for a more powerful attack. Facing the incoming water cannon, Dragonite didn't dodge, condensing its destructive ray, colliding directly with the water cannon. Leaving aside the outcome, Gardevoir decisively utilized Teleport, a Psychic-type skill, to dodge the water cannon's attack. Furthermore, Gardevoir had already appeared some distance away from Blastoise. Waves of invisible energy began to spread out from Gardevoir, converging on Blastoise. Confined by these invisible waves of telekinesis, Blastoise felt its water cannon's output suddenly stagnate. Furthermore, a faint pain emanated from its mind. Yet, even facing such a disadvantage, Blastoise gritted its teeth and persevered. Blastoise roared again, and its water cannon, originally aimed at Gardevoir, instantly redirected its other cannon, originally aimed at Gardevoir, towards Dragonite. With these two combined attacks, Dragonite's destroying ray was clearly being pushed back at a visible rate. However, just as Dragonite was about to be hit by the water cannon, a nearby Gardevoir intervened to hold it back. Under the constant stimulation of the mental assault, even Blastoise, no matter how strong her will was, would inevitably break down after such a prolonged period. The once powerful water cannon was now beginning to show signs of weakness, no longer possessing the unstoppable momentum it had previously possessed. Thus, the clash between the water cannon and the destruction beam ended in a draw. This guy is truly quite capable. I've fought you for so long, and I didn't expect you to be so powerful. Watery was now filled with caution, completely discarding the contempt he had harbored for the 8th captain of the S organization after his previous victories over Takukura and Ichi. He's impressive, but so what? Under such a siege from us, I doubt he can hold out much longer. Gardevoir, use Magic Leaf. Dragonite, use Dragon Wave. Blazoo, use Triple Water Cannon. The massive cannon behind him, once valuable, now resembled a cannon, now manipulated by Blastoise. Even before firing, it exuded a chilling aura, and then, with an unreserved volley, it met the Dragon Wave and the Monoliquid with an unstoppable blow. Fortunately, Magic E at least had some grass attributes, allowing it to serve as a vanguard against Water Cannon. Wherever the Magic Leaf passed, Water Cannon was slashed. Behind him, the Dragon Wave hurtled down. Under this double attack, Water Cannon was disintegrated from the inside. Blastoise had no time to dodge, and had to endure the Dragon Wave. But that wasn't the end of it. Before Blastoise could recover, it felt itself mentally restrained by an invisible force. The next moment it reacted, a massive bolt of lightning struck head-on. The 100,000 volt damage dealt a heavy blow to even Blastoise, despite its exceptionally strong defense. However, the damage didn't weaken Blastoise, instead, it became even more ferocious. The two cannons on its arms acted like machine guns, as Blastoise unleashed water cannon fire after water cannon fire. Even the incredibly sensitive Gardevoir was hit by several of these water cannon fire. Similarly, not only Gardevoir, but Dragonite was also forced to fall from the sky. This Blastoise's defense is too high, and not only that, but its attack is also incredibly high. They say the Kanto region starter Pokémon are just 3 turrets in their final form, without mobility, they're just targets. But, Watery and Kaluna, both considered top Pokémon trainers, frowned as they pondered how to defeat Blastoise. Watery, prove that we can't be a match for Blastoise in a head-on confrontation. In this case, let's adopt a guerrilla approach. Kaluna leaned into Watery's ear and whispered a plan. This is the only way. Let's give it a try. Since they were planning to employ guerrilla tactics, they definitely needed a diversionary force. Charizard, you go too. Use Flame Jet. Dragonite, use Lightning Palm. Gardevoir, use Illusion Light and Psychic. Blastus, block it and wait for an opportunity to counterattack. Faced with this perfectly combined attack, Blastoise didn't make a single move, simply standing there like a giant meatball. However, with these three skills working together, Blastoise had no way of breaking through. They included melee, diversion, and ranged attacks. If one was in danger, the other two could provide support. Even under the cover of Gardevoir and Charizard, Dragonite, even without taking flight, displayed impressive speed even while running on land. In 2 breaths, he was in front of Blastoise, raising his Lightning Palm and striking directly. Facing the Lightning Palm, Blastoise instinctively retreated into its shell for defense. Dragonite and the others didn't give up, continuously unleashing their attacks. However, this constant onslaught eventually gave Blastoise an opportunity to strike back. After enduring the onslaught for a while, Blastoise finally found its opening and, with a high-speed spin, pushed Dragonite away. The massive barrel aimed directly at Charizard, who is now blasting flames with delight. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.